I need a motion for the recommendation of the Administrative Hearing Panel for student case number 024049.
So moved.
Second.
Again, that's Carl and Close. Roll call vote, please.
Director Carl?
Aye.
Director Close?
Aye.
Director Hanel?
Aye.
Director Christoph?
Aye.
President Jay?
Aye. I need a motion for the recommendation, to support the recommendation of the Administrative Hearing Panel for student case number 027055.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Director Carl, seconded by Director Close again. Roll call vote, please.
Director Carl?
Aye.
Director Close?
Aye.
Director Hanel?
Aye.
Director Christoph?
Aye.
President Jay?
Aye. And do I have a motion for the recommendation of the Administrative Hearing Panel for student case number 028054?
So moved.
Second.
Again, that's Carl and Close. Roll call vote, please.
Director Carl?
Aye.
Director Close?
Aye.
Director Hanel?
Aye.
Director Christoph?
Aye.
President Jay?
Aye. And finally, I need a motion for the recommendation of the Administrative Hearing Panel for student case number 1415065.
So moved.
Second.
That's Director Hanel and seconded by Director Carl. Roll call vote, please.
Director Hanel?
Aye.
Director Carl?
Aye.
Director Close?
Aye.
Director Christoph?
Aye.
President Jay?
Aye. Thank you. Are there any statements of abstention? Any adjustments to the agenda? Any board member requests for information? Wait. There is an adjustment to the agenda. In our excitement about our tentative agreement, we inadvertently placed approval of the agreement on item E11. The tentative agreement will need to come back to the board for the final approval on June 24th. These documents must be made available to the public at least 10 working days to the date on which the governing board will take action on the proposed bargaining agreement. This is to ensure that the public is aware of the known costs of the agreement. So that's why we're removing E11.
So that comes off?
That comes off. It'll come back to us on June 24th. Okay, any board member requests for information? I need approval of the minutes.
Move approval of the May 27th, 2015 minutes.
Second.
Moved by Director Carl, seconded by Director Christoph. Roll call vote, please.
Director Carl?
Aye.
Director Christoph?
Aye.
Director Close?
Aye.
Director Hanel?
Aye.
President Jay?
Aye. Next, we move to C7, public comments on items not on the agenda. The public is invited to address the board regarding items that are not on tonight's agenda. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes each. Under the law, the board is not allowed to take action on matters that are not on the agenda. Persons wishing to speak should complete a speaker card and present to the board. I have 2 speaker cards so far. And I'd like to add that while we recognize each person's free speech rights to talk at a board meeting, we are requesting that speakers do not express a complaint against an identifiable employee of the district without giving the board an opportunity to meet its legal obligations of forewarning that employee and giving them the opportunity to have the complaint heard in closed session or open session. If you do have a complaint, please see the superintendent, or if the complaint is about the superintendent, please see the board president. This notice will allow us to meet our legal obligations, and your complaint will be heard. Okay, so our speakers so far are Omar Medina and Chris Birch.
I wanted to pull E12. When do I tell you that?
There we go.
Hi.
Again, my name is Omar. So I wanted to start off by going over the fact that it's been about 20 years since I was a student, freshman at Cook Junior High back then. It was there that I was introduced to Drink Cultura, a book by the late Jose Antonio Burciaga, who at the time was a professor at Stanford University. As I reflect, I realized that it was this book that was really my first introduction to ethnic studies, in this case specifically Chicano studies, which I would go on to study at Sonoma State. As a teenage Mexican male, Drink Cultura was a fascinating book because it was truly about a similar experience to mine. It helped me understand how I too was a part of the society and how people that looked like me, spoke like me, and had similar traditions were an essential part of the fabric of what we call America. But more importantly, it helped me build my pride. Instead of feeling like being Mexican was this negative thing, as many in society still try to make me feel, it helped develop that internal pride and confidence about who I was and am. As a person of color, I know this to be true. Ethnic studies in all its forms, history, art, literature, etc., has given me a greater understanding of myself, our shared history, the diversity of people in our society, and has made me a better and more well-rounded person. The North Bay Organizing Project Education Task Force believes bringing ethnic studies to our schools is something worth discussing. Today, I'm here in my capacity as co-chair of the MBOP Education Task Force to invite you to the screening of the film Precious Knowledge, which highlights an ethnic studies program in Tucson, Arizona. After the film, we plan on having a panel of speakers along with a Q&A session to discuss ethnic studies and how we might work towards bringing ethnic studies to Santa Rosa City Schools. The event will be on Thursday, June 25th at 7 p.m. at the Arlene Francis Center, which is at 99 6th Street, behind Aroma Roasters. We invite everyone to attend, teachers, staff, students, families, administrators, and of course, board members. So join us in this very important dialogue as we discuss ethnic studies. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris Birch and Kathy Shanklin.
Good evening. I'm Chris Birch. I am a counselor at Santa Rosa High School as well as athletic director. And my colleague, athletic director, is Kathy Howard. But we do have Ernesto from Pioneer High School, athletic director there as well. So we are speaking in regards to athletics in schools. 2 years ago, Kathy Howard and I stood at this very podium and asked for your support and assistance in creating and maintaining a safe and meaningful athletic program for Santa Rosa City Schools. Since our plea, mandatory concussion testing has been imposed in the 5 schools in various sports. This is a fantastic step towards supporting student wellness and health education. On top of the support for implementing baseline concussion testing for our athletics, Santa Rosa City Schools also approved a small stipend to hire 5 registered ATC trainers to be on our campuses during sport competition and training. Unfortunately, the amount of money offered was not enough to hire all 5 positions, and it was certainly not enough to retain these valuable members of our athletic program, so Santa Rosa City School Board unanimously approved a pay hike after only 1 year on our campus last board meeting. Thank you. As a parent, counselor, and athletic director, I commend these steps, but question where athletic directors and coaches fall in these priorities. Santa Rosa City Schools has, for too long, ignored the safety and importance of athletics on our school campuses. These programs have been left to wallow in benign neglect, even as liability, safety, and competition has increased in athletics all over the region. School athletics have a proven effect on its student population: increased grades, increased attendance, lower dropout rate, better mental health, all the things that Santa Rosa City Schools is striving for through these new created positions through LCAP. Between 40 to 50% of Santa Rosa City School high school population participate in 1 or more school sporting teams. Of this percentage, 50% are economically disadvantaged. Every kid should have access to a safe and healthy program, a place where they can be encouraged, educated, challenged, and experience success, the same mission we hold in our classrooms. Kathy and I just returned from an annual California Athletic Directors Association conference in Reno. We spent 3 days interacting, learning, and both being inspired and disappointed. There are over 1,500 athletic directors in the state of California. Of the 500 attendees, we were unable to find any other AD who wasn't compensated with FTE to tend to their job duties. Some were full-time ADs, that means 1 FTE, and others range from 0.4 FTE and a stipend on top and above. One of the panel speakers was a superintendent. He spoke to a filled room about how he supports his athletic programs, athletes, coaches, and most importantly, his athletic directors. It was inspiring to live in his fantasy district for an hour. He met with each AD and coach and asked them the question, how can I support you to do the best job possible? And then in return, he asked them, this is what my expectations for you are in this role. I would like for our district to take a more active role in supporting and involving themselves in school athletics. I know many of you on the board have had children participate on school athletics and can remember all that is entailed even back then. School athletics are the biggest draw and retainer for our district, as well as any other district. If athletic programs were not offered in our schools, a huge percentage of families would leave Santa Rosa City Schools and go elsewhere. A staggering amount of money would be lost in ADA walking out the door. Yet we pay our athletic directors, 2 at each high school site and 1 at middle school site, a pittance, just a little over $4,000 a year. On top of this, athletics has no additional clerical support, no assistant athletic directors, no district funding for the principals to run athletics. That's $0 to buy balls, officials, anything like that. And our coaches make a couple grand a season, which at the high school level runs year-round to ensure competitiveness. With all the obstacles and hurdles placed in front of school athletics, Santa Rosa City Schools continues to excel. One would ask, how is this possible? It's possible because there are people who are willing to sacrifice themselves for others, much like what you've been hearing from the teachers over the last 4 months. Unfortunately, without support and some relief, these few people will break and disappear very soon. We're at a crossroads in athletics in Santa Rosa City Schools. Does our district value its student athletes and all it brings to our district, and then revamp and finally support school athletics, or will Santa Rosa City School continue to lose good coaches and ADs to a system who grinds us up without thought or consequence? The yearly turnover in hiring for athletics positions is monumental. It takes hours to recruit and hire every single year when there's turnover. Does our district, to lose good coaches and ADs grinds them up? Okay. All other districts around us pay more to their coaches, give them more support, and upgraded facilities. These other districts offer better compensation to their ADs and give them time during the day to do their job. All of these districts are smaller than Santa Rosa City Schools, yet they're able to prioritize this. In the fall, as Elizabeth Evans attended one of our Santa Rosa City Schools athletic director meetings at the district office, she asked us, all the athletic directors of Santa Rosa City Schools, what we needed to relieve some of the pressure from the AD position. The one and only recommendation the whole Santa Rosa City Schools ADs gave was that we needed 0.2 FTE each to be able to do our job. And on top of that, we would like a stipend paid and adjusted. Right now, the stipend that the ADs are paid is on a 1985 school pay rate. The current pay is connected to the teacher's pay scale. Elizabeth wanted to talk about accepting less. She didn't think you, the board, would support us in our request. AD soundly said no and explained to her, Jason Lee was not present, why we didn't think that those were viable options. The ADs were told on May 6th by Jason Lee that he presented to you, the board, his recommendation of 1.2 FTE per school, and that you accepted his proposal. And we thank you for the 0.2. We want you to know this was not what we asked our representative to put forward to you, the board. We feel disrespected and silenced by our district office administration. Each school has 2 ADs. How are 2 ADs supposed to work with 0.2 FTE? Logistically, how does a school offer a 0.2 FTE? Does the boys AD get the time off and the girls AD does not?
Excuse me, could you wrap up a little bit, please?
Yes, I'm
Thank you.
wrapping. Sounds like a Title IX issue. So now the principals are put in the position where they have to pick a favorite AD and grant them time off, which is a slap in the face to the other AD. We need your support to reconsider supporting both ADs on campuses so that we can do our job. Please grant each AD a 0.2 FTE to do the tireless job of managing a highly litigious, time-consuming, and important position on our campus. Thank you.
Thank you. And then we have Kathy Shanklin.
Good evening. I'm interested in an item that you have on your agenda for consent tonight, and it has to do with a truancy grant that the probation department is working with the district to do, and I think it's a wonderful idea. I do think that it's targeting very small populations, and in general, the truancy issue sort of walks all the way across all the districts and all the schools in alarming ways.
Excuse me, Kathy?
Yes.
If this is on our, what item is this? Do we know?
I believe it is E10.
So, okay, so I need to ask you to wait until it's time for E10, okay? Because it's my fault. I put you on here. I called you out for the public comments not on the agenda, and it is an agendized item, so could you come back and see us in a little while?
Sure.
Thank you.
Can we make an adjustment to the agenda then to pull E10
Yes.
to make sure we get public comment?
And I want to pull E12.
So E12, E11, I just asked for that. What's Kathy's item? E10. Okay. Okay, so I have two other cards here, and they're for F3. So there are no other comments for people of talking on topics not on the agenda, correct? Great, thank you. Okay, let's move on to Employee Association reports. President Stern, no report. Good evening. Is Tammy Afonso here? No. And Chris Fiero? No. Okay, Superintendent report.
I'll just make mine quick. We are having a lot of exciting activities going on these next 2 weeks on our campuses. A lot of great summer programs being offered. In addition to summer school, we have for credit recovery at the secondary level. We are growing enrichment programs at our school, and we're excited to offer not only migrant education, but summer enrichment opportunities at different sites, and certainly at Cook, our partnership with the Wells Fargo Arts Center, looking at arts and music, is an exciting new opportunity for us that we look forward to. In addition to that, we have a number of professional development activities going on. I had the opportunity today to stop by Santa Rosa High in their multi-purpose room. We had probably, I want to say, 50 teachers doing Project Lead the Way, where we really are, the teachers are embracing the maker movement at the elementary level and discussing with a lot of rigor and a lot of deep thought what that means around the new science standards and kind of how that can look exciting in our classroom and what excites them and what that means. Additionally, we had 2 days of talk, aptly enough for our item today on the school climate transformation grant. Our administrators thinking deeply about transformation at their site, what that means, how they get people involved, and their own understanding and connection to restorative justice. We have a series of other things going on for the next week, including GLAD opportunities and other opportunities. We have a call out to our own teachers and certainly other partners in our community around the It's About Time coming again in August, so please look for that. Please, if you're excited about sharing something with your colleagues, fill out the application so that we can make sure to have the highest quality offerings in August when we come back to that. So thank you.
I just have 2 items to report out on. The first one is I participated in an interview panel for the Ag Mechanics class at Elsie Allen High School, and it was their year-end project, accounted for 50% of their grade, and it had to do with, they had to have demonstrate thorough knowledge of the project that they chose, created, and presented, and of course they're being judged on their soft skills and eye contact and composure, and it was really fun. The kids did the best, I think, when they started to just get a little bit more relaxed and truly be themselves, and that was my feedback to them. Is you always put your let people know who you are, and have that reflected in your presentation. But it was really good. The other thing I attended was Comstock did an 8th grade graduation ceremony and an after party, and look at Ms. Shanklin there, yeah. It was wonderful. It was packed. It was attended by, all families show up. They had a band, they had a buffet. A lot of things were provided by people in the community who stepped forward and supported the school. The parking lot was overflowing down to the driveway out onto Steel Lane. And at any rate, it was a great night, and I think a wonderful example for the kids of even greater things to come. So it was, I really enjoyed myself. It was a very eventful evening for these kids and their families. So we now move on to board member reports. 2 minutes each, and we'll start with Jen.
Okay, let's see, I went to the LoCN event on the LCAP where our superintendent moderated a panel of speakers. It was very well done, very informative. Spent an evening and a morning at IE Sonoma where a lot of our teachers were, and that was really very inspiring, and a nice shot in the arm about some great nonprofits around education, and also one young architect who created a very cool hands-on program, kind of a maker program. I got to do the LC graduation, which was great because our student board member, Cynthia, did the speech for her class, and that was really neat to have her there. And also I was lucky to get to do Ridgeway's graduation for the 3rd year in a row. I don't know how that worked out, but it did, and it's a really, if ever you have nothing to do on the last Friday of school in the morning, you should go to the Ridgeway graduation because it's really very special. They do a very cool presentation in lieu of the normal student speeches. That's it.
That's it. I had the pleasure of doing the Piner graduation. It's always a pleasure when I do that. That was my brother's alma mater, and I reminded the students, or I told the students that, and also reminded them that they ought to participate in the foundation and at Piner to give the great things that are happening there to subsequent students that come along. And I always go to the practice beforehand because it's a blast to shake their hands twice. You get to see them in all their student garb, and then in their dressed up garb, and it's a fun opportunity. I did get a chance to also tell them that this one was a special one for our family because this was the last class of students that my brother had taught at Piner Olivet. It was his last 3rd grade class at Piner Olivet that was now graduating from Piner High School before he took a job down in Southern California. And I got quite a show of hands couldn't pick them all out at the practice, but it was something between 15 and 20, and a couple of kids came up and made comments, and it's always nice to make a connection with the kids that's different than other connections. It was fun. It was also 2 great student speeches. Sally Brimrose did a wonderful job of messaging the students about where they were headed and what they were going to do. And her whole family, Sally's whole family, was there because it was Sally's graduation from Piner too, as she had told the kids. It was her retirement last graduation, and it was a pleasure to be there and see her graduate with that class. So it was a great evening, as it always is at graduation.
Director Hanel.
I want to thank Jen Close for filling in for me at Ridgeway because I was in Texas over the weekend. And I want to just say thank you to Omar. I think these 4 principles really need to be taught in our schools somewhere. We do the BEST program, and we do other programs, and
That's from Diane.
these are very cool.
Yeah,
Thank
that
you.
book is a
That's from
gift
Diane.
from CNI.
The book's from Diane.
What?
The book's from Diane.
That book, the
But Omar, you would
Oh.
really like the book.
I thought this was, I assumed you
Hey,
gave
take
each
credit
of
when
us
you
a
can
book.
get it, huh?
I'm sure it's similar. Thank you, Diane. It's very cool. Well, that was, I guess I had to read that a little closer. Okay, thank you.
Director Christoph.
Wanted to thank Lori Fong and the staff at Montgomery for such a lovely graduation. It's you know, the students are, we've got just such great students in our system. Every school is different, and every school has its own culture, which is really unique, and their own way of doing graduation. And it's been a pleasure to see all the differences in our district, but the one thing that they all have in common is that there's just a lot of pride there, and there's just you know, the warmth of the staff and the parents, and, you know, Montgomery congregates on the field after the graduation, and it's slow to move away and say goodbye. Santa Rosa is a little different. I've experienced that, and had the pleasure last year of working Elsie Allen's graduation, the year before Carrillo and Ridgeway and so on. And we really have, I think, a wonderful system, and the uniqueness of each school and each school community strikes me every time I do this. But anyway, another class down. 2016, here we come. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, no CSBA, NSBA report tonight. Director Pugh is out of town. So let's move on to the consent items.
I'll move items E1 through E9.
Second.
So that was moved by Director Carl, seconded by Director Close. Roll call vote, please.
Director Carl?
Aye.
Director Close?
Aye.
Dr. Hanel?
Aye.
Dr. Christoph?
Aye.
President Jay?
Aye. So Kathy, no, not yet, sorry.
Yep.
Yes,
E10.
Kathy. Now we move on to the item you came to speak about.
Okay, back to truancy. So this is a wonderful grant, but I feel like it's targeting a small population because it's the alternative high schools, which indeed do have a very high rate of their student population who are considered truant. But across the board with our district, we're having a higher rate in general. And I was really surprised when I looked at the elementary rate. The elementary rate of students who are considered tardy is 42.5% compared to a state average of only 31%, compared to a county average of only 22%. So it's really significantly higher. And there are 2 elementary schools who are going to be in the pilot program, but I'm wondering if we're going to wait a whole year to really make a lot more changes about the truancy rate. I started doing numbers in my head, and let's hypothetically accept that both secondary and elementary have the same ADA, just for the sake of a hypothetical number. And the hypothetical number could be $8,500 per student. So in terms of lost money, because ADA is based on attendance, so this is a loss of that money coming into the district. For elementary, it was $346,783 if each student was only truant 3 times. And for secondary, the same rate of truancy, only 3 days, there's a $607,000 and 13 and 10 cents loss. That's huge, because added together, that is $953,796. So truancy is a real money issue for our district, and I think it's really a place where we can save money. I think the use of the family facilitators that are starting to show up at school sites is a real positive move in the right direction, and utilizing their services could really help narrow that gap. And I also would propose earlier intervention with students. If the norm for our district policy is that a student may be truant 20 days, or excuse me, 20 hours per semester, if the student were truant after 5 hours rather than 15 or something, it could step in and question the student's conduct and help the student perhaps realign with school more readily. And I just want to say how much I do support the grant, but I'm hoping that it can work with a more general population than simply small population schools. We have this problem in high population high schools as well. Thank you.
Thank you. So I need a motion on this.
Move it, E10.
Second.
That was moved by Director Christoph, seconded by Director Carl. Roll call vote, please.
Director Christoph?
Aye.
Director Carl?
Aye.
Director Close?
Aye.
Director Hanel?
Aye.
President Jay?
Aye. Okay, now we move on to E11.
No, E12. E11 got pulled.
So confused.
It's all right. It's summer.
E12. Pulled. Remember, that's what I read to you in the beginning of the meeting, which then I forgot. So, E12. Authorize the use of HPWSCA contract B2716 for acquisition of laptop computers.
So I'm going to ask to have it pulled.
Okay?
Okay, Rick, great. Can you explain how that decision was made to buy the 892 computers and some of the savings that I thought was really great, what you got, and the operating system that it's on, and how all that was determined?
Yeah.
This is going to put a computer in every teacher's hands in the
Right.
classroom.
So, thank you and good evening, Superintendent Shields and members of the board. This is for the purchase of 900 laptops using a contracting vehicle. As we've discussed before at several previous board meetings, the lack of technology and the age of technology in our district, especially in the classrooms. This is the first step of upgrading or updating some of that technology. Through this process and through several meetings that we've had in the springtime concerning the tech bond, one of the things that was clear was the devices that teachers are using in their classroom oftentimes are old. And this is the first step in upgrading that. This will also be able to be used in training facilities for teachers as well, and potentially extend to students depending on what else is at that school site. We went with HP as the standard that we have in our district right now. I would say 98% of our computers are HP, so we wanted to keep the same type of equipment, same type of computer life cycles, as well as having one place to service them rather than having multiple vendors. As we've also discussed previously, the ability to use one of these contracts, such as WSCA, the Western States Contracting Alliance, sets a pre-negotiated ceiling for us. And beyond that, we can negotiate on our own additional discounts. And in the board packet, I put just the WSCA pricing that HP were to give us if we just went and said, we want 900 computers. The second quote was for WSCA pricing with additional negotiated discounts that we did in order to get these computers, which saved us almost another 50% off of that pricing, which we felt was very fair for the type of machine that we're going to acquire. The question about the OS, all of these devices will come with Microsoft Windows 7 at this time with upgrade rights to Windows 10. So we will not be playing in the Windows 8.1 world, which no one really seems to like, including myself. But once Windows 10 becomes stable and we have some other tools in place, we'll be able to upgrade at no additional charge.
Well, I know the teachers are going to appreciate this, and I also want to say thank you to the voters because we were able to use our bond money for that purchase, and thank you for getting a great price.
Thank you.
Do you want to make a motion, Larry?
I'll move E12.
Second.
Moved by Director Hanel, seconded by Director Carl. Roll call vote, please.
Director Hanel?
Aye.
Director Carl?
Aye.
Director Close?
Aye.
Director Christoph?
Aye.
President Jay?
Aye. Okay, now we move on to our discussion action items, and we begin with a public hearing regarding local control accountability plan, elementary district. Dr. Guzman.
Good evening, Superintendent Shields, school board members. So I will hand it back over to you, and you can open the public hearing regarding the elementary LCAP. I think it's open. Is it open?
Yeah,
Yes, I opened it.
Okay, so are there any comments? Are there any?
No comments from the public?
Okay,
Okay, we'll close it.
thank you.
Now we go on to public hearing regarding local control accountability plan, secondary district. Ms. Kitamura.
Yes, President Jay, Superintendent Shields, members of the board, we provide for you the secondary LCAP for public hearing.
Any comments? We'll close that. Very good. Now we'll move on to F3. School Climate Transformation Grant.
Yes, and I have a lot of people that are going to come down, so give me 1 second. Down and we'll make room. We'll make room here. Okay, this time I'm going to start with a video. So last time I ended, so this time we're going to start with a video. So please take a look at your screen.
Santa Rosa City Schools have been awarded 2 new grants that are expected to have far-reaching impact on school climate and student success over the next few years. The first, called the STEM grant, is bringing project-based learning, focusing on math and science, into many classrooms. It funds Project Make the Way and is providing 3 years of professional development to about 60 teachers.
Teaching students discrete math skills like they've been taught in the past won't prepare our students to be able to solve the type of problems that may arise in the future. So one of the aims of this project is to teach students problem-solving skills within engineering and technology concepts so that they will be able to solve those types of problems.
The second grant will affect every student and every school in the district.
It is exciting for Santa Rosa City Schools to be the recipient of the School Climate Transformation Grant. It is a federal grant, and so we are one of very few schools who have received this across the United States.
This grant will begin with 10 schools and increase to all Santa Rosa City schools within 5 years. It will focus on positive behavior interventions and supports, or PBIS. The district is calling it Best Plus.
Best Plus is going to be an opportunity for us to further develop the programs that are in place. So it's going to include more professional development, the creation of site teams, site leadership around implementing best and restorative practices in our schools.
In addition to Best Plus, the School Climate Transformation Grant will also help continue the restorative justice practices that are reducing suspensions and expulsions throughout the district, introduce Safe School Ambassador student training, as well as other student engagement programs into every school, and will also provide behavioral health support services throughout the district through multi-tiered systems of support, or MTSS.
And I think that this is going to be an ideal opportunity for us to make that change, make that upgrade, take it to that next level. That's really exciting.
The grants fit into the framework that the district is already using to structure programs, services, and intervention, multi-tiered systems of support, or MTSS. Data from assessment screening helps to decide what will be universal for all students, what will be targeted to some students who need a little extra support, and what will be intended for fewer students. In a typical district, usually about 20% of students need targeted or intensive support, but in Santa Rosa City Schools, about 40% do.
Our tiers are a little bit off kilter. That's what the work we're doing with school transformation, with the Best Plus, with restorative justice. All of those things together are here to help write that pyramid.
And that means during the next few years, staff will receive the professional development, coaching, support, and tools they need to develop positive learning environments at every school.
Santa Rosa City Schools is this gem. It is waiting for all of us to come together to polish and to refine, because our students are worth it.
Remember, we are Santa Rosa City Schools.
Concludes our presentation for this evening. So as you can see, I have many community partners around, as we could not do the school transformation grant as well as the STEM grant without all of us coming together, as I said. And I think that the thing that I, as we were preparing this presentation, that we always come back to, it is the district's strategic plan, what you began a couple years ago, and how that began, I feel like began this journey where, once I get this put up here, it created our four district goals. And so, it's coming. Our 4 district goals. And so this is what frames our work, and it is what frames actually just everything we do in the district. And so it was very important as we were looking at the strategic plan and the LCAP in conjunction with the school climate transformation grant, how really the school transformation grant was the mechanism for how we implement the goals of the strategic plan and the LCAP. And so you all created the what together with the whole community, and this is the how. And so as you can see, we have some very definite metrics here about what we want to achieve by September 2019. And you heard things earlier today, it revolves around attendance, increasing instructional time for overall academic achievement, and then you heard a little bit about Best Plus. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that as we move forward. The grant itself does have the goal of improving behavioral outcomes and learning conditions for all students. And really the focus is to create site teams and to train them. Because as I say here, it's really about building leadership and leadership capacity from the inside out. We have such a great asset in our schools with our school staffs, our teachers, our administrators, and that for us to have the true transformation that we want in the district, it really begins at the school site with their teams deciding and understanding and training together to build the system from the inside out. And as you can see, so it's site leadership teams with 6 to 8 staff are represented. That includes parents and students. You heard a little bit on the video, and we've been talking a lot about the positive behavior or the Best Plus, and so and the multi-tiered systems of support. It's all coming together, and that Best Plus represents not only that intervention, the PBIS, but really our work around restorative justice and the immense work we're doing around behavioral health support, mental health services, and counseling. Weaving that all together with some best practices. We're going to be safe. We have safe school ambassadors at certain schools who want to grow that out to more schools. We have Link Crew beginning to happen more and more. We have peer leader classes and AVID. AVID is something that we definitely want to expand throughout the district. So I'm not going to did this because the video did such a good job on MTSS. You guys are going to be old pros at this. Here are our famous mountains that we'll never be rid of because it really frames again what we do. But here is a different slide that you saw in your packet, and you can't read this very well, but it really puts into perspective in my mind the tiers, the 3 tiers, in very specific ways around activities and a way of being. So you can see in the blue, I'm just going to read these: racial equity, cultural responsive, data-based decision-making, relational approach during or with, and then trauma-informed and sensitive around, again, the 3 tiers represented through actual programs, processes, and behaviors. So at this point, I want to introduce who's with me at the table because I think it's a possibility that maybe one of my partners here might want to speak to this. But let's just start from here and everybody introduce themselves. Hold on.
Hello, good evening. My name is George Chavez. I'm with the Humanidad Therapy and Education Services Program here in Santa Rosa.
I'm Julie Iverson. I'm the Social Advocates for Youth Coordinator of our school-based mental health services.
I'm Elizabeth Goldman. I'm the Mental Health Services Director at Social Advocates for Youth.
Good evening. My name is Matt Martin, and I get to be the Executive Director of Social Advocates for Youth and his family of programs, including Tomorrow's Leaders Today.
Good evening. My name is Carrie Berkowitz, and I'm here as a support and partner to assist in the restorative justice practices implementation.
Good evening. My name is Todd Harper. I'm with Restorative Resources, also working in the area of the restorative practices and support.
Beautiful slide that you created. Yeah. So to say a few words about this slide, something that I think is really exciting about what is happening here in Santa Rosa City Schools is this very intentional blending of numerous initiatives coming together into one comprehensive rollout plan. And so what this slide captures is an integrated image of the numerous interventions and practices and various strategies that are going to be moving forward with and training in, both in regards to the BEST Plus as well as the restorative justice practices. And it just really ties together everything really nicely. Oftentimes when we see these tiered slides or the triangles with numerous initiatives, what we see is it's separated. So we'll see on the one side, we'll see what the interventions are for the BEST, and on the other side, we'll see what the interventions are for the restorative justice practices or the mental health support work. And so what we're doing here is we're really wanting to present it as just one comprehensive approach. And so we're integrating the trainings. It's all coming together in a way that is not going to be a separate training for this and a separate training for that. And so this slide, I think, just captures that integration effort really nicely.
So as we said, it said 10 in the video, but actually it's 9 schools this year, and we already are geared up for our next set of cohorts for next year. Training has already begun for the first cohort. It is about $700,000 a year to provide the K-12 professional development, coaching, support, implementation. And I think, again, I've darkened this last one, district-wide school site capacity building with sustainability focus. And that's that inside-out approach, that we really have to begin with teams within schools to truly make this shift occur. These are the schools that are participating. This is, again, we just talked about the BEST Plus, and I think this sentence, and that's why I put it in here, a multi-tiered systems framework that establishes the academic, social, and behavioral cultural approach and intervention supports needed for schools to be effective learning environments for all students. And then some core beliefs around that. I think it says a lot about the work that we're doing, and as Carrie said, the integrated work that we're doing. So I'm okay with this. Anything on this slide? I'm going to move forward. I think this is something we already talked about. So now we're going to move into the restorative justice part of our presentation. So I'm going to have some of our partners here, Todd and Carrie, speak a bit about that.
Yeah, so we see up here, and part of the reason for bringing this back together with this new climate transformation efforts is to kind of reset and remind, what is this that this restorative justice piece that's going to be a part of this integrated model. And so what you see up there is just a basic definition of really of what is the central message behind restorative justice practices. And so it is a system of principles and practices that together sustain a culture of kindness, respect, responsibility, and justice. And very importantly, it's also achieved, all those things are achieved through emphasizing the importance of trusting relationships and being able to repair relationships when harm's occurred. So that's really the very core of this whole restorative justice piece. And this graphic that you see up here, it really emphasizes, again, the marriage between principles that stem from values and that inform the practice, and the actual practices that include maybe circles, restorative conferencing, informal dialogues, inclusive decision-making, all those things which we'll cover a little bit more later. Those two must go together because the principles maintain the continuity while still allowing the form of the practices to be adapted according to the need of particular schools and particular needs. And An example of this, as you see at the bottom, is we're going to be showing shortly a video that really illustrates how these two things come together. The principles of kindness, respect, responsibility, and other such values that we all hold, and how they become embodied and become part of the education process and in any classroom. And you'll see an example of how that can work in a classroom setting. The video, yeah.
So we have a multimedia approach tonight.
We are founded on the 7 essential virtues of a restorative community, which are trust, respect, honesty, empathy, caring, family love, and accountability. Whoever is holding the talking piece is talking while everybody else will be actively listening. This is my very own talking piece that I brought in, and what this represents is the love for my grandmother because she gave this to me.
I'm not that open with my feelings, so when I feel like I tell them to stop, it's hard, but I think they'll understand.
And I really want to tell her, but I feel like if I tell her, she's just going to think, what do you know? You don't know my story or anything like that.
I tend to be very honest with my friends. So I just told him that my other friend stole something from him.
Like I cared about her, and so it was really hard because I don't really get too emotional to explain my feelings or my thoughts.
So we all were picked together to be in this classroom, and it was very awkward. We didn't know each other. So we got to learn who we are individually and as a group, and that's how we've conducted this amazing circle where we can be ourselves and we can help others.
I see different perspectives now. Usually I would just see one perspective, like, oh, they did this, so this should happen. And now with restorative justice, it makes me see a whole different type of perspective that, yes, there's consequences, but it's not just for you to be punished, it's for everyone to understand. And I didn't see that before.
Being in this class has been very eye-opening because I learned not only the different parts and the whole process of restorative practices, but I learned how to make it a part of how I am as a person. So when I have personal confrontations or problems with the person, I know to not become defensive or to go to them just because I wanted to shout at them like why they did what they did. I know to go to that person and to be able to talk it out enough to the point where we both have a mutual understanding and that our relationship is restored and we still have our bond together.
I reveal that I wouldn't ordinarily reveal to others, and that then allows the students to reveal things that they ordinarily wouldn't reveal things to others, and it's this cyclical process where as the weeks go on, we develop this sense of trust and understanding.
To me, I don't see this as like a class. I see this more like a family. This circle is like, we were all strangers. I never knew none of them. Some of them are freshmen and some of them are seniors. But now, like when we got together, it changed my whole perspective of each and every one of them. And to me, it's like a family.
Yeah, and so what this slide shows, and here I just extracted a few quotes that came from that video, and really what I want to illustrate through this is how those principles that we saw in an earlier slide, what we're trying to accomplish through this transformation effort is is embodied in what these students have felt in their classroom experience. So, the first one, who are you? You don't know my story. That's often kind of the baseline feeling that students have in school. And so that's really the challenge that we're faced with, is making them part of this community in a good way. And so, they got to learn who they are individually and as a group. So what their own value is and how that value can be contributed to others in the school community, being able to see different perspectives, not only understanding the process and the pieces of the restorative practice, but how it becomes a part of their lives and how they see themselves as students and how they see the school community. And then finally, to me, the quote about, I don't see this as a class, I see it more as a family. To me, I would imagine and hope that that's what we would arrive at in every class, not just a particular class, but that's the understanding of what the feeling is like in your classroom.
And so we also want to point out just a little bit more explicitly what these principles are. I think that video was, as Todd mentioned, just a really great example of how these principles come to life through their experience in being in circle and having the opportunity to really connect with one another in a really open way. They were able to reveal all of that and bring that to life. And so ultimately, when we're talking about implementing restorative justice practices, it's a lot. This isn't a program that we're talking about. It's really working to establish a way of being, a culture in the schools that are truly grounded in relationships, where relationships become the central focus of how we relate to one another. And so through that, we're constantly paying attention to what is happening with each other. Where are we right now in regards to the quality of the relationships between the administrators and the teachers, and between the teachers and the students, and between the staff and the families. So this is really something that is all-inclusive. It's really looking at the entire school community and recognizing that trusting relationships are really essential to building strong communities in the school. And so there's two parts to the work within the restorative justice practices, one being around the building of the strong relationships, and on the other side of it, it's really looking at how do we respond to situations that are coming up in the schools when there's conflict, when there's challenging behaviors or behavior infractions, when there's harm that comes up, that we're moving towards focusing on less on assigning blame and punishment for breaking of the rules, and more towards looking at, wow, how did this interaction or this behavior, how was the community affected by it? And so we're bringing everybody together to really explore how were the relationships impacted by what happened? How do we really establish a culture where we're allowing for those who were involved in a situation to come together to truly take responsibility for their actions? By coming together and learning and listening to how what happened impacted others in the community, and then together working on deciding or learning about what the needs are as a result of what happened, and then coming together to around problem solving to determine what needs to happen to make things right moving forward. It's really about establishing a culture of doing with, where we're all in this together and we're working with one another and moving away from doing things to or for others. Ultimately, the fundamental hypothesis is recognizing that people are going to be more likely to change their behaviors when people in positions of authority do things with them rather than to them or for them. And so there's the practices then allow for that to come to life. So the principles are something that it can be really grounding in regards to helping to frame what this is about, and then the practices themselves bring them to life. So for example, we would speak about how do we go about making decisions in the schools in a really inclusive way, really recognizing that people are going to be more likely to follow follow along with the decisions that are made when they've been included in the process of the decision making and they've had an opportunity to contribute their feedback and their input into the decisions that are going to affect them. So we would speak about fair process as one way of making decisions where everybody's voice can be heard in that process. We also talk about effective language as a practice where we really are focusing on how do we truly connect with one another through our communication. And so effective language is a way of connection through genuinely expressing how we are impacted by one's behavior. So we're explicitly, instead of just saying to somebody, stop tapping your pencil on the table, we would expand that to say something like, when you tap your pencil on the table, it really creates a disruption in the classroom. So it's starting to think about how in all of our interactions we are providing opportunities to allow for people to see what is happening with them and what their actions are and how that's impacting the larger community. The circles being another one of the practices that really allows for true connection to occur. Everybody comes to the circle and is in a very, it breaks down the powerential differences that exist, and that everybody is able to truly express what is real for them. There's lots of different types of circles. There's connection circles. You can use circles for goal setting, to bring curriculum into it, for checking in the morning and checking out in the afternoon. It's just a way to bring everybody together to connect and build stronger relationships with one another. And then when we move towards recognizing that conflict is occurring and that something has happened that's created a fracture in the relationships, the approach then that we're taking is through the use of restorative questions that bring people together to really explore what is happening. We want to get at the root causes as to what is happening and how whatever it is that has happened is impacted the community, with a focus on what now needs to happen to make things right moving forward. And so there's a lot of logical consequences that results through a collaborative problem-solving process where everybody's needs are heard, and ultimately through the agreements that are made, their needs can be met, and that the individuals can take responsibility and be held accountable for their actions moving forward. So that happens on a continuum from really informal processes. So there's something happening in the hallways and a teacher sees that there's some escalation or something is happening, and so a teacher or a staff person can approach those two individuals using the restorative questions to really learn to understand what is happening and hopefully to de-escalate that situation right then and there, and moves from that all the way up to a very formal restorative process for situations that are much more severe.
And then this last slide is just briefly going back to some of those values, those core values that help to inform a restorative school community. And these, most importantly, though, were developed in collaboration with the students, actually by the students. This is what can come out when we allow the students to take responsibility for their own education and to be involved in a really authentic way in what matters to them, and to be able to vocalize that and also to share it with the school community. So these are values that they hold dear and that they'd like to see spread throughout their school.
So that's one piece, the restorative practice part of the Best Plus, and again, part of our integrated approach through the school climate grant to take a look at how we improve the outcomes for all of our students. The other piece of this is the behavioral health support side of it, the mental health services. We actually have two partners here today. We have SAY and Humanidad. So we have a little bit of information to provide for you there.
Hi, good evening. George Chavez again. Maria Hess, who is the executive director of our agency, could not be here tonight because they're going to be starting a 2-day conference with the faculty, administrators, and staff at Cook Middle School. It's an off-site retreat that's taking place tomorrow, so she was busy getting ready for that, so she couldn't be here. I had not planned on talking tonight, but I will speak briefly about our program. We're very excited to be at Cook Middle School, and we feel we've had a significant impact there over the last couple of years. We were there in the last school year, 2014, 2015. We've been there 2013, 2014 as well. And we are talking about continuing our services for 2015, 2016. We have been holding groups, or called One Circle groups, on campus with boys and girls, where they have a chance to talk with certified One Circle instructors who are trained in leading these groups. And the groups are situations where the students are together, and the group facilitators ask them questions that over time, over a series of several weeks, enables them to do a few things, one of which is to build trust within their group and to share their feelings about what it's like to be on campus and to share some frustrations that they have about their life as students. And it's been shown for One Circle groups that boys and girls who go through these groups in the short term have less drug and alcohol problems. They feel satisfaction with the participation in general. And they also are able to improve relationships with their peers. So we're working with the students in these groups. We're also, excuse me, last year we also conducted focus groups on campus with the faculty and staff that work on campus. We did a focus group with different types of students. We did the high achievers. We did the middle of the road, people who are good students, don't have any problems in general, and then we work with the high-risk students as well. And we've been compiling that data from those focus groups. And Maria is looking forward to and has already shared some of the data that we've collected from those focus groups with the principal at the school. So there's some very exciting things that we're doing. We're really excited about having this two-day conference beginning tomorrow because it really begins to focus on the issue that's getting a lot of attention these days called trauma-informed care. Maria and I were at LC Allen High School quite some time ago, and she gave a presentation on the topic of trauma-informed care and the phrase known as vicarious trauma to the teachers that were assembled in this group. And it was absolutely amazing to see the response that we got from the teachers in having someone who was there to talk to them about what it's like in their life to be a teacher at the schools at LC Allen, which is where the group took place. They were very responsive, they were expressive, they were open to hearing things, and it was just a really terrific experience all the way around. I was just a fly on the wall, and I watched the situation as it evolved, and I was impressed as an outsider as to how great of an opportunity it was. Maria's going to be doing 7 more presentations if our contract is ratified for next year. So we'll be doing 7 more presentations over the course of the school year at different locations on the topic of trauma-informed care and vicarious trauma. So it's pretty exciting stuff.
It's just an aside. One of the things I've mentioned before, but just to reiterate, we realized with the issues that happened in our community, specifically around Andy Lopez, we thought immediately of the stressors on the families and the students. One of the things we deeply underestimated was the stress on our own staff. And one of the things kind of in response to that we were able to do was really grow La Humanidad on the Cook campus, not just for our students, but for the staff, because that was such an epicenter of trauma for our community. And they have really focused on serving the needs of that school, of the growing charter school and the charter school families that we hope to have with Via Esperanza, and really kind of then the connection as they grow older at LC Allen. And so that trauma-informed care that was mentioned is something we are bringing back to all our campuses and all our staff, knowing that it's an issue for our students in their own lives, the trauma-informed care, but it is also an issue for staff both with their own lived experience and then that vicarious trauma in terms of serving sites or populations that have large amounts of that type of stress kind of happening daily or weekly on site, either to their students, to their families, or to that community. So that really is an exciting next step, I think, in education in general, recognizing that role that trauma-informed care plays when it comes to school and when it's found in the classroom, but then also understanding the needs of our staffs in those areas and the support they need. I think in past years, you've kind of heard the fill the bucket phrase, and even our work with a Green Lantern group, that our caregivers give and give and give and give, and there's times when they just have to pause and breathe deeply so that they have rejuvenating time and are able to continue their work with such passion. So this very special kind of work that you're doing is greatly appreciated.
Thank you so much. We are, in fact, going to be holding another round of training in July for next year. We've got 20 people who are signed up to become One Circle certified trainers again to be able to help with the Santa Rosa City Schools next year as well. Are there any questions about our program?
We're going to wait till the end because I think there's.
Thank you so much.
And what George is mentioning about the training, what it is an extension of what Socorro was talking about. The Cook staff is going to head into a 2-day wellness training, and Maria is going to be presenting, doing the whole 2 days because of this need to take care of all that they have gone through in these last couple of years. And so I am so excited that it's happening, and I can't wait to spread it throughout the district. And so then another partner that we are working with is SAY, and so I will turn it over to them.
Thank you, Diane, and thank you again for having us here this evening. I have to admit, of the three of us here from Social Advocates for Youth, I have the easiest job and the best job because I get to say thank you. I get to say thank you as a professional, but I also get to say thank you this evening as a parent of the Santa Rosa City School District. I'd like to thank the board, obviously the district administration as well, the principals we've got the chance to work with this past school year, the teachers, the school counselors, and the support staff. We are here back before you this evening as we promised to be back on September 10th, 2014, when we started this conversation with you. At that time, there were 5 community factors that led us to developing SAY's mental health wellness programs in conjunction and partnership with Santa Rosa City Schools. The first, Superintendent Shields already mentioned, was the tragic death of Andy Lopez, which obviously created great pause for us as a community. The district's LCAP goal to provide behavioral health counseling and mental health services. The Santa Rosa City Schools Spring 2014 Mental Health Pilot Project, our community and local law enforcement task force's _1 recommendation to expand behavioral counseling and mental health programs in the schools. And lastly, Portrait of Sonoma, the place-based assessment looking at the quality of living here in Sonoma County. All of these factors are very, very important in why this is the right thing to do and this is the right time, because in the end, it's all about the students that we together get to serve. And so I'd like to turn it over to Julie to share a little bit about one of our students.
So I had the great opportunity this year not only to coordinate this program, but to be able to provide direct services on Biela Elementary. So I thought I'd share a brief story of my experience there that kind of demonstrates the variety of services SAY was able to offer to some of the campuses we served. Early this spring, I received a text from Principal Diaz asking me to check in with a teacher when I was on campus the next day. I went and met with the teacher in the morning and she shared that there had been some challenges with sexual harassment and bullying in her 6th grade class, and she needed some guidance and support in dealing with it. She and I talked, and we agreed that I would come back in the afternoon and do a presentation to the class on sexual harassment and bullying. So I met with the class and actually engaged them in a conversation about bullying and what sexual harassment actually was, and then what the importance of feeling safe at school is. We talked about coping skills and ways they could stay safe, as well as ways to reach out to adults when they're in danger. It was a great conversation, and I felt like the 6th grade kids were phenomenally engaged. I was very surprised. The week after, 3 of the students from that class came to me independently and asked to meet with me. In individual sessions, they shared that they were each being bullied and using self-harm, drugs, or alcohol as ways to cope. I began seeing all 3 students individually, and after about 6 to 10 sessions each, they were able to stop using the drugs, alcohol, or self-harm. They had implemented positive coping skills for dealing with stress and had built more positive relationships with their family members. During these weeks, I had also been present on the playground during recess so that students, including these students, could come to me if struggling with peer problems or bullying in that immediate moment. 2 of these students actually did come to me during that time and were able to resolve issues with peers that would have perpetuated into bullying otherwise. I also continued to stay in contact with the teacher and make myself available for further consultation so that she, as the person who spent the most time with those students, felt she had an awareness of safety issues with the kids and any ways to support them. So this is literally just one example of 14 clinicians who served your campuses this year. And I think it's just a good example of the breadth of services we can offer in support of your staff and students. You'll see on this slide that though we rolled out to campuses at different times, we served 20 campuses as well as Hidden Valley's satellite. I'm just going to click through, go very quick. And you'll see it's also in your board report that we have a report card. This is as of May 1st. We don't have the totals for the end of the school year because I'm still totaling the 20 trackers. So, but this, as of May 1st, we were able to see 4,500 students, and over 1,200 of those were unduplicated, meaning they did not participate, or we did not count them if they participated in more than one activity.
As you can see from the report card, 4,500 plus, it was over 4,500, and this is just since October, received 1 or more SAY mental health wellness services. One of the things we were excited about is that we tracked and assessed the demographics of the students as we went along, and that your Santa Rosa City school staff referred students proportionally and equitably according to the district demographics. And as we've heard here tonight, serving students equitably is a key foundation of your goals. So we're very pleased. That came not from us. It comes not from us that the referrals came. It comes from the school staff. So the school staff is doing an excellent job of identifying who needs the services, and it really is across by ethnicity, gender, and age.
So as I said, we did a lot of tracking, demographics and number of contacts. We also did a survey of 100 students, just so that we would have an idea of their feelings about if they had increased services. And so they all reported, or as you can see, the average is between an agree and a strongly agree, that they felt that they received more services, support services this year. They also said that specifically the SAY services were helpful. And you'll see a list of quotes from those 100 surveys in your board packet.
So we listened to school leadership and focused our efforts on helping the students get to, stay in, and be fully present in class. That's what we heard over and over that was needed. And this really was for the purpose of working together with school staff to help support your district's efforts towards creating a strong and unified school culture.
So in an effort to do this, we provided such services as individual sessions, group sessions, classroom psychoeducation lessons, staff wellness trainings, individual grief support, prevention education services, and then we did campus-wide mental health awareness activities. 9 campuses participated in our mental health march. Usually it's Mental Health Awareness May, but we moved it to March so that we didn't try to cram it into May. And you'll see in your board packet as well 3 examples of the coping skills that the campuses came up with, where children were asked, the whole campus was asked to participate in writing as many coping skills as they could think of, and then we tallied them and gave each campus their top 10 or top 11 or top 12. So you'll see an example from each level in your board packet. The other thing you'll see is a menu of services that each campus has received, and you'll have a better idea of what we've done. So, Diane has explained the multi-tiered system of support. You saw the video, and we just thought we would kind of include the slides so that we could share how excited we are and how proud we are to be contributing to this process that the board is taking. We really have been proud to be working at every level, or at all levels of the MTSS.
I'd like to say on that last slide one other comment, which is that, of course, many of that, when we're talking about trauma tonight and trauma-informed care, that many of the students that we saw at every level had deep levels of trauma, and it was indeed a focus for us to address that trauma and help them, as I mentioned, to get back to and be able to stay in class, because they cannot learn if they have the trauma interfering. School staff concerns about partnering, we heard a lot about that. We paid close attention to that. And indeed, we worked closely with each campus's school team. As Director Christoph mentioned earlier when he was speaking about going to different graduations, each campus does indeed have their own culture, and we put a lot of effort as a team, Matt, Julie, and I, into focusing, in addition to the other clinicians that actually were on the campuses, into really focusing on what each campus needed for their culture. SAY clinicians had over 1,550 consultations with school guidance counselors and school staff. It's a lot of consultations. And Matt, Julie, and I had over 100+ in-person meetings with school leadership in order to build this strong, customized program to meet each school's needs. In addition, in order to address the concerns around partnering, we consulted with an attorney who specialized in educational law and created a collaboration memo for our staff to help them understand where HIPAA and FERPA crossed over, and you'll find that collaboration memo in your board packet.
All right. And then finally, we're going to talk about what comes next. We have been thrilled to work on the 20 campuses this year, and we're working with the district to return to campuses in August. This past year, SAY clinicians also attended 59 SST and IEP meetings, and so we're talking about being able to continue to offer those services to support students who need behavioral health interventions even before they get to the IEP place. And finally, on Monday, we will be starting what we're calling our Bridge to School Readiness Summer Program. Well, we will be offering mental health services in the summer school programs on those campuses that you see. I am waiting to hear back from a couple principals for confirmation, but our goal is to get started on Monday. So, most importantly, we just wanted to say thank you. We've been honored to serve the students and staff, and can't express our gratitude enough for the opportunity.
So I know that was a very long report, not normally as long as I normally try to do, but I also think that you see that this is a very multidimensional, complex process that we're going through, integrating and weaving in multiple services, initiatives, and programs into the School Climate Transformation Grant. And so finally, our last slide is that for all members of the school community to feel safe, valued, and have a sense of belonging, so you heard about that, so teachers can teach, students can learn, and parents can trust on a daily basis. And so we continue to have this in our minds as we move forward with the school climate transformation grant and fulfill the strategic plan of the district as well as the 4 identified goals. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we turn it over to the board for questions and comments, I have 2 speaker cards, Donna Zapata and Omar Medina.
Is this on? Yes. I'm Donna Zapata, and I'm a community member for many, many years, and have worked with SAY throughout those years. And I'm also, I have gone through the Santa Rosa school system. My son went through the Santa Rosa school system, and so did my grandchildren. So I'm here to thank all of you for the partnerships that you're doing with SAY and restorative justice. It's key as a grandparent seeing what happens to a family, to many families when the support that's being provided is needed. It can be shattering with nowhere to go or don't understand how to fix a problem. And by providing these services, you're bringing it home, which needs to be there. Once these programs are shared with our community and our students, there is a need. There is a need. The numbers show you today. And along with this, I am very, very impressed with your collaborative partnerships. It's so, so important for this community to have those collaborative partnerships. We see it every day. And to see you do this, I'm impressed. So I also wanted to say, when the students get the services, it not only affects the students and enriches them in some way for a better life, including school. It helps the parents. They talk about the tiers. There's the students, then there's the parents, then there's the siblings, and voila, the grandparents, me. Because we care for our children. As eloquently as Matt Martin always says, our children matter in our community. And you're showing it today with your collaborative efforts. And I can't thank you enough as a community member, because we need you to continue on with your strategic plans for this and your focused efforts and everything that you're doing. So again, 4th, 5th time I've said it, thank you.
Thank you for your support. Omar Medina?
There's a lot of me. So again, my name's Omar Medina. I'm co-chair of the North Bay Organizing Project's Education Justice Task Force. And today we're here to speak on the School Climate Transformation Grant. The North Bay Organizing Project, it's a coalition of over 20 nonprofit, faith-based, and labor organizations. And we were initially moved to action in Santa Rosa City Schools by our deep concern over the high and racially disproportionate rates of expulsion and suspension for Santa Rosa City Schools. We saw that the zero-tolerance approach in combination with unconscious bias was an engine behind the school-to-prison pipeline that resulted in higher dropout rates, unemployment, and ultimately incarceration of our minority and other at-risk youth. We now have the benefit of 2 years' experience since the district introduced restorative practices as an alternative to suspension, initially as a pilot program at Cook and LC Allen, and then the 10 middle and high school campuses. Preliminary observations indicate a dramatic drop in suspension and expulsion, but there remains a need for a more complete implementation with more and deeper teacher and staff training and support, as well as more detailed record keeping to help assure the positive outcomes we all hope for. The Climate Transformation Plan before you today offers a much more comprehensive and deeper approach to turning the environments in our schools around and supporting our youth to succeed. It acknowledges that school climate directly affects attendance rates and overall academic achievement. The plan recognizes the importance of culturally appropriate responses and racial equity. It situates restorative practices within a continuum of key mental and counseling strategies and provides implementation training and coaching. We have been concerned in the past about the lack of detailed data to adequately evaluate the performance and outcomes of restorative practices. The new school climate transformation program includes implementation of the SWIS school-wide information system, along with training and required data entry. We look forward to reviewing the reports of the SWIS system. We encourage you to share them with the community and use them to improve your efforts. We strongly support the addition of a district-level coordinating administrator to oversee and support the multiple important and challenging components of the transformation plan. We believe this position is needed to monitor strategies are being implemented with fidelity to resolve issues and offer support to individual schools where necessary. The transformation plan also refers to consultation with and direct students, families, and the community in the district's rollout and oversight. We believe this participation is inadequately vague. I quote, "In time, a student and parent representative will join Best Plus leadership team." This is insufficient. We encourage that a fuller description expansion of the goal include ELACs and other parent and community group involvement in significant numbers. The North Bay Organizing Education Task Force is invested in the success of our youth and our schools. We will continue to stand in support of efforts of the district to achieve true educational equity. Thank you.
Thank you to all of you for coming out. I thought maybe somebody else was going to say something, but thank you so much for everybody coming out tonight and hanging in here with us. We really appreciate your support. Okay, so now I take it back to the board. Bill Carl.
Thank you. Thanks, Diane. And I particularly thank you to the community partners that are here. I appreciate that you come down on a Wednesday evening and give us a very thorough analysis of it. That's very much appreciated. Diane, at the beginning, we talked in terms of the expectations and a matrix of the things that we're going to look for by September of 2019. I wonder how and when we will assess impact and efficacy before we get to that stage, because we don't want to come back in 5 years and say, okay, how did that work? We obviously want to assess on an ongoing basis so that we're in a position to make changes or make adaptations that we think are important. So what's that process going to look like?
Well, actually, we just turned in one of our first reports to the federal government. And so because this is a federal grant, we actually have a liaison in Washington, D.C. that we're in constant contact with. We have to have a first-year report in July. And so the metrics are no joke in this grant. And so we have to actually give benchmarks and give updates and produce the data. And so when our partners, MBOT partners, talk about providing the data, you can be assured it will be provided not only to the federal government who's providing this grant, but we want to bring this back to the board. I think this is implementing the strategic plan.
Right.
And so therefore, the measure of how we are doing with that strategic plan is going to be by this data. So you will see us at least once a year, if not more.
Okay, good, thank you.
Director Hanel?
Thank you, and thank you for that report. I appreciate the work you're doing. I had a question. The circles I saw Rob Bird in a circle. I'm assuming that wasn't his classroom. I know how excited Rob Bird is. In fact, I've talked with him about SAY, and he thinks it really makes a difference. Do they do that during their prep period after school? Or do some of the teachers have them in the classroom? I know he's in a drama situation, so they could go out and work on projects and their work, and then he could maybe do that within the room.
We actually have a community building class. That's actually a class that we have.
Okay.
And Rob is the teacher of that class.
Yeah,
and we are very fortunate to have Todd and Gina, who's here too, assist and work with the class. So, do you want to say more to that, Todd?
Yeah, I would just say that class certainly had a greater amount of time and flexibility, certainly, to be able to really hone and develop those skills and be present with each other in that circle format. But it's definitely also an option for any teacher. That's what, his efforts are meant to be, is to make that a common practice in classrooms, not just dedicated to one class.
I don't think we noted this, but that class, those students actually operated a circle for the entire staff, right? So there was an issue or situation that occurred that they actually led their teachers, their staff, in a circle.
I also saw there was something in here about faculty observations in the BEST program. And did I get that wrong?
Can you be more specific?
Okay, maybe I didn't get that right. There is going to be a survey, I think, released in April. Is there a survey coming out from the staff as to the work of the transfer of the grant in the school?
In April?
Well, when would this survey? I thought data was being collected from the survey.
So we have so many surveys going out. I apologize for not remembering exactly which survey from which area. It is a piece, again, another piece of the data collection for the school transformation grant. There is a survey that it's called the Delaware something that surveys students, staff, and parents.
I think it's very.
And that data, that survey has been done, and Dr. Ayala is our external evaluator in terms of data, and he's putting all that together.
So we'll be seeing that.
Definitely.
Because I think it's very important that we see how, through a survey, through the eyes of the teachers, the eyes of the staff, the teachers, and actually the students, how the climate actually
absolutely
transforms. Because in 5 years, the grant will no longer be in effect. And there are other schools out there that would be looking then to perhaps participating in this type of transformation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you for your work.
Director Close. Thank you. Thank you for that very complete report. And I appreciate all the demographic data that you collected and all the work that you've done to work together. And that's the main question I have for you. Is I know that how sustainable these collaborations are really depend on the relationships that you each build with the site staff members. And so I guess I'd like to have some report or specific explanation about how you've been working to create positive relationships on the sites.
Well, we can definitely do that. I will say that all of our community partners are meeting, working, collaborating with staff all the time. Each one of them are building relationships. The Humanidad and SAY, tremendous. They have just built such a framework, a foundation for the work ahead. We're just beginning with the Best Plus teams, the Best Plus leadership teams. We're just starting the in-depth training, and that will carry through. Because again, as I said, I can't say this enough, really, and Socorro Superintendent Shields reminded me of this as we were building this presentation, that truly for transformation in this district to occur, it has to be grassroots. It has to come from the sites, from the people who have to implement, and that is where the sustainability will come in play. The training, the coaching is all about deep implementation, and so you can't have deep implementation if you don't have relationships, if you don't have that trust built between the partners, the district, and the sites. And so we look forward to bringing back data which will show that the implementation is actually occurring. Yes.
To add to that, in regards to the Best Plus implementation, we're doing something that's really exciting in that we're starting a site leader program. And so there's the implementation team that's composed of about 6 to 8 people, and we've requested for 2 people from each of those teams to assume the role as a site leader. And so we're going to be meeting with those site leaders on a monthly basis to build a really strong collaborative relationship. So they'll ultimately become the liaisons between the school site and the central team, but very importantly, they'll be forming very close relationships with one another to support each other in this important work.
I think it's important to note as well that in this cohort work, all the schools heard about it. Actually, teams came from the school to hear about it, and they chose in, right? They said, now's the right time for us. We're interested in tackling this as a team. This is what we want to do. So it really was about readiness. It wasn't like names were pulled out of a hat or people were forced into it. It really was a site choice after hearing the options and understanding that the work happens at their level. What the program looks like, or what the definitions are, or where the issues are, whether it's an issue of, if they have a particular drug issue on their campus, or if they have a hallway or a time when certain things are happening, or certain subject areas, like all of that data really defines how they solve their own problems and issues and what they want their campus to be, how they want their campus to feel. That really is a decision they make, and then they find the right solution for themselves, because again, that's how it happens, and they empower their teachers, their parents, their students to be that way and grow that on purpose. And I think that really is why this grant was so appealing to us as an organization, because it really is about defining that for yourselves and creating that possibility yourself.
Jen, did you want to say anything else?
Follow-up question, and in terms of developing, a real strong collaborative network at each site, if administrative support from the district is needed for that, at what level does that support come from? Is it the principal level? Is it assistant superintendents?
Okay, I'm not sure if I understand the question.
So if there is a specific challenge at one site that's not being worked out at the site level amongst the various partners, who steps in to help guide the team? Is that you?
It's the district team. So not only there are site teams, but there's a district, what do we call it? It's a district team, super cabinet, specifically around the school climate transformation grant. So it generally will come to me, but it can come to the whole group. And then I bring the partners together. We bring the partners together to resolve the issues. So, and it could pop up in different ways. It could be a principal contacting, it could be a counselor contacting. I could hear something on the street from a teacher. I will make a call, or I will ask one of my partner people here to make a call and say, hey, this is what we heard, what's going on, so we can alleviate the issue right away.
All right. Well, thank you for all that you're doing. I'm sure it's having a great impact.
Thank you all for being here tonight, spending so much time with us, and giving us such an in-depth knowledge of what you're doing, what's going on in our sites. And I'd also like to thank you all. The work you do makes our strategic plan a truly living document, and we're very proud of that, because that's not an easy thing to do. It's much more common that you do this with it, right? So, but you're making it come alive. So thank you very much. Great report. Now we'll move on to F4, the prerequisites for successful district parcel tax. Superintendent Shields.
So at different times, the board has expressed the desire to kind of explore what the possibilities are around a parcel tax. We know our community is incredibly supportive of our students and public education. So what could it look like? We also know that our community as a county has been very supportive of different parcel taxes in the past. And so after speaking with some districts who have been successful in their parcel tax travels and journey, I wanted to share with you kind of what has been recommended to me in terms of kind of looking at this possibility. And Charles comes very highly recommended, and he's just going to kind of lead us through a discussion about is this something we do truly want to explore? Because serious exploration would require an investment of our district dollars, but of course, like we did with the bonds, we believe that it's an important investment to ensure success later down the road. So without further ado, Charles.
Thank you. Good evening, Superintendent Shields and members of the board. I'm Charles Heath. I'm a partner with TBWB Strategies. We had the great pleasure of working with Santa Rosa City Schools on your successful bond measures L and I, this past November. I personally work with a number of school districts within your region on planning and passing parcel tax measures for the ballot. So tonight I have a presentation that will walk you through some of the basics of parcel taxes, some of the timing and policy issues that you would want to think about as you contemplate the potential for a parcel tax measure. And then we'll also talk a little bit about the process that you might go through if this is an avenue that you want to pursue. So let's see. There we go. So starting off with some of the basics, what makes parcel taxes such a sought after and valuable asset for school districts is the fact that this is truly locally controlled funding. This is a stable source of funds that are locally approved, locally controlled, and probably the best part is the state can't take the funds away. So in good times and in bad, this is a stable source of funding that you can count upon. Well, if this is such a wonderful funding tool, why don't all school districts have them? Well, they're difficult to pass. They require a 2/3 vote. So unlike bond measures that can be passed at a 55% majority, these require a 2/3 supermajority. Parcel taxes are also a useful funding tool because they're highly flexible and customizable to meet an individual needs. There are various terms of the measure that are variable. One, the use of funds. So unlike a bond measure where the funds are specifically limited to facilities, furnishings, equipment, technology, things of that nature, parcel tax funding can really be used for any purpose, including salaries, staffing, programmatic purposes. So there's a lot of flexibility there. You also have a range of options in terms of the tax rate, the duration of the measure. Some parcel taxes are framed as temporary measures that may be in place for a 4 or 5 period of time to get a district through a difficult patch. Other parcel taxes here in Sonoma County have been structured as permanent taxes to provide an ongoing stable source of funding. You also have a set of options in terms of exemptions and accountability provisions that are at your option measure. State law allows you to exempt property owners within your district based on age, so it's become quite common for school districts to offer an exemption to homeowners age 65 plus to ensure that these measures don't become a financial burden to those living on a fixed income. In addition, you're allowed to exempt low-income individuals with disabilities that meet a certain set of criteria. So there's some options there that, again, aren't available to you with a measure such as a bond proposal. Accountability provisions, you can build in a committee, annual audits, those types of public reporting requirements that typically make taxpayers feel more comfortable about making the investment. As many school districts have passed parcel taxes over the past couple of decades, some opted to structure their parcel taxes in the simple traditional format where it's a single rate per parcel of land within the district without regard to whether or not that's a single family parcel, a multifamily residential parcel, or a larger commercial or an industrial parcel. Others took the route of structuring their measures based on the size of the property or the type of the property in order to make the tax burden on that individual property reflect the size and use of the property. There was an important court decision a couple of years ago where some property owners within the Alameda Unified School District sued, claiming that their parcel tax that had a different set of rates for different types of properties didn't meet the state requirement that parcel taxes be applied uniformly across all parcels, and that suit was successful. So currently, based on the interpretation of that case, parcel taxes must be applied uniformly, which means a single rate per parcel across the board. As you think about a potential for a parcel tax, the different key decisions related to what is an optimal election date, what's an optimal tax rate and the various features of the measure should really be based on, one, the district needs, but also an assessment of the community's priorities. And I'll talk to you in a minute about how we use public opinion polling, like we did in the bond measure, to gauge the community's priorities and sensitivities in order to plan a measure. As you're familiar with, based on the bond process, as you work on any potential ballot measure, the process for planning and preparing that measure for the ballot may be coordinated and funded by the school district, but once the board votes to place a measure on the ballot, any advocacy activities related to the passage of the measure must be privately funded and coordinated by volunteers. So those rules are consistent with what you experienced with the bond measure. So one client we've worked with in recent years to secure parcel tax funding is Cotati-Rohnert Park Unified School District. So I provided here a sample of the actual measure that appeared on ballots in June of 2012 and was approved by 2/3 of voters in that district. The way parcel taxes are typically constructed, this is the actual 75-word ballot question that appears on ballots. It's a similar form to what you had for your bond proposals. They typically lead off with a big picture description of the purpose. So in this case, to protect quality education with local funding that cannot be taken away by the state. We find in community after community that's a big selling point. Shall Cotati-Rohnert Park Unified School District, and then we enumerate the various specific uses that these funds would be used for: preserving reading, writing, math, and science programs, keeping school libraries open and available for students, protecting art and music, so on and so forth. And then the specific terms of the measure. Cotati-Rohnert Park, based on polling, found that they were able to secure a parcel tax of $89 per parcel for 5 years. They're actually preparing to seek their renewal of that measure here this coming November. And then some of the accountability protections that I mentioned. Money can't be used for administrator salaries, and all funds do stay local. So that gives you an example of how these measures are typically constructed. By statute, we're limited to 75 words for the actual ballot question, understanding that you can't possibly pack all the detail of a parcel tax proposal in those limited words. In the full ballot text that's presented to voters, you have a longer description of the specific uses of the funds. So that would appear in the ballot pamphlet that's mailed to all voters. And this is the specific language that was adopted by Cotati-Rohnert Park. As we look specifically here at your district, I discussed with your financial advisor the approximate number of parcels in each of your 2 districts. There are about 65,000 in the high school district and about just over 20,000 in the elementary district. So just for the sake of conversation, we ran some rough numbers in terms of what a parcel tax might generate for the school district on an annual basis. Assuming you did offer the package of exemptions that most school districts offer, the senior exemption plus the low-income exemptions, we typically find that approximately 10% of the parcel taxes, 10% of the parcels in your district would end up being eligible for that exemption and would actually apply for it and follow through. So we factored that in here, which would leave about 58,000 taxable parcels in the high school district and 18,000 taxable parcels in the elementary district. And then you can see we ran a range of different potential rates from $25 per parcel on the low end all the way up to $100 on the high end. And you can see that that generates for the high school district between $1.5 million per year up to almost $6 million per year. So, and typically we find with an initial parcel tax that a school district is pursuing, something in that $25 to $100 range, albeit a broad range, is where we would start the conversation. At the elementary district, obviously fewer parcels, so those rates generate smaller amounts of money, between $500,000 all the way up to about $2 million per year. So any number of options in between, but that gives you a sense of the kind of dollars we might be talking about with a potential parcel tax. So a few different items that you might want to be considering as you think about a parcel tax. One, we talked about the importance of the tax rate and the duration of the measure. Those are sort of key features that voters typically focus on when they're assessing a parcel tax measure. If you're going to be aggressive with the tax rate, typically you need to be more conservative with the duration so voters can reevaluate the measure in short order. If you're being more conservative with the rate, oftentimes you can push the duration longer to lock in that stable revenue. That trade-off between what you value, dollars versus time, is a policy decision for the board and something you'd want to think about. And as you're thinking about a parcel tax as well, you don't want to just consider the current environment. You want to think about, well, what is the school funding environment going to look like over the next 5 to 10 years, right? And try to anticipate what your needs might be over that period of time. And then, of course, you'd want to think about your community priorities as measured through a poll and other outreach that would be conducted in the community. And even more important than in a bond campaign, you would want to evaluate your potential for a strong advocacy effort supporting the measure. These two-thirds elections are tough, and you wouldn't want to put this on the ballot without the expectation that you could deliver a strong advocacy campaign in support of that measure. So moving on, here is a list of potential election dates when you could place a parcel tax measure on the ballot. You have more options for a parcel tax than you do for a bond. I've listed the options here in 2016 and 2017. That line in the middle of the options there separates those election dates that would allow you to get a parcel tax on property tax bills in time to collect revenue in the 2016-17 fiscal year versus if you waited past June of 2016, then your first opportunity to collect revenue would be in the fiscal year 2017-2018. So that's sort of a key point of demarcation in the process that you would want to consider. Other factors related to election date are, what else is going on in your school district that might affect your ability to mount an effective campaign? How much lead time do you need to prepare a measure for the ballot? And then also, what else is appearing on these ballots that might influence how voters are thinking about school issues? In 2016, obviously, we have the presidential primary election in June, the presidential general election in November. The general election will generate very high voter turnout. I've seen historically here in presidential general elections, voter turnout can get up into the 75–80% range. So that's an opportunity that you may want to look at. Of course, the trade-off there is it'll be a long list of other issues on that ballot that will be competing for voter attention and potentially for tax dollars as well. So looking a little bit at the process for thinking about a parcel tax, much like we did with the bond measure, you would want to start with a feasibility study. And this is where we try to answer the big picture questions. Is a parcel tax feasible at the two-thirds level? If so, what does that measure look like? What's the tax rate? What's the potential duration? What's the use of funds? What's the optimal election timing? And try to understand, is this a red light or a green light type situation? We also look at the political landscape in terms of what competing issues are out there, what's influencing voters thinking about these issues to try to assess what the optimal structuring and packaging of this measure what might look like. If we get a green light at the conclusion of that feasibility phase, and we've conducted a survey of your voters and we feel confident that we can achieve that two-thirds level of support, then we begin the outreach and consensus building process. Typically, that starts with internal outreach, reaching out to parents, teachers, staff, folks within your school community to make sure they're engaged and they understand the needs that the parcel tax would address. And from there, we go to the external community, business leaders, elected leaders, others, types of folks that would you want supporting a measure if it were to go to the ballot. That's a process of informing them about your needs, but also soliciting input to help you refine your proposal as you go forward. From there, the next step in the process is to take what we've learned in the feasibility study to build your measure for the ballot, write the ballot question like I shared with you for Cotati Rohnert Park, build the list of programs and services that would be funded by the measure, put all that into the set of resolutions that would come back to you for a voter for approval to trigger the election. The deadline for the board to act to qualify a measure for the ballot is 88 days prior to Election Day. So hypothetically, if you were looking at a June 2016 election, that deadline would fall at the beginning of March. If you were looking at a potential November 2016 election, that deadline would fall in August of 2016. Again, I'm not recommending those election dates. That's for illustrative purposes. So from there, board votes to call for the election. You move into the advocacy campaign process. Typically, that starts with forming the Independent Advocacy Campaign Committee that would be responsible for raising the private funds, recruiting the volunteers, and implementing the types of campaign tactics that would result in a successful vote, similar to the process you went through with the bond measure. And then ultimately, typically these tough two-thirds elections hinge on your ability to shape voter turnout by getting parents and other supporters of the measure to vote disproportionately to the rest of the community. So get out the vote strategies are very important. So that's an overview of the process and some of the parcel tax basics. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you for that presentation. typically, have they had more success, as you say, targeting the voter participation? Do they have more success in a mail-in ballot?
Many school districts around the Bay Area in particular have moved to placing their parcel taxes on these all mail-in ballots. One of the real advantages of that is that typically you'll be the only item on the ballot, so you're not competing against that long list of state and county and city measures that might be on a primary or general election ballot. So you kind of have voters' attention to yourself. Those tend to be lower turnout elections, so you can leverage that lower voter turnout to your advantage if you're able to get parents and other supports of the measure to vote in large numbers. And the mail ballot process sort of lends itself to having an extended voting period to get those folks to vote.
And am I assuming that you can only vote by mail?
Correct. Essentially, every voter becomes an absentee voter.
Okay. And secondly, are there different polling targeting methods for a mail-in ballot than, say, a poll ballot? I would think there would be.
Yeah, well, I mean, the issue of polling generally and how to do it successfully in an environment where people are abandoning their landlines and moving to cell phone only, I mean, that's a topic we could talk all night about. But you're right, in a mail ballot election where you're expecting a narrower portion of the electorate to vote, typically it's even more difficult to reach those, those very frequent voters and make sure you've accurately measured their opinions. Increasingly, pollsters that we work with are doing a combination of phone interviews, but also online interviews in order to engage some of those younger and middle-aged voters that are rapidly moving away from the traditional landline where you just can't reach them in a purely telephone-based survey.
But you are able to get their emails.
Yes, yes, and they'll spend 10 to 15 minutes online completing a survey.
Okay, and what did Roanoke Park do? What kind of, did they do a mail-in?
They did not. So they, because of timing considerations, most of all, they passed their parcel tax in June of 2012 when we were still in the economic and budget crisis. They had an urgent need for funds, and the next opportunity for them to go to the ballot was June of 2012. So they jumped on that opportunity because they wanted to get the measure on tax bills as soon as possible. June of 2012, it was a primary election. The primary was wrapped up by the time it got to California, so we had a low voter turnout, and we used the kind of get out the vote strategies that we discussed earlier to help them get over the top.
They're more expensive than mail-in ballots.
The mail-in ballots are more expensive than a general election for the district to actually administer the election, but less expensive than a traditional special election where the county has to operate polling places and such.
Right. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Director Carl?
Thanks, and that was one of my questions. What is generally the cost, or do you understand what the cost is in Sonoma County if we had something like this on the June ballot versus the November ballot versus a mail ballot versus a special election ballot?
Right. We would want to solicit specific estimates from the county for each of those elections. I think that for a general election, you can usually assume that it's somewhere in the neighborhood of $1 or $2 per registered voter. So, in your high school district where you have almost 100,000 voters, it's probably a $100,000 cost to put that measure on the ballot. But again, you're looking at the potential for, several $1 million a year in potential revenue, so that would be the trade-off. In a primary election, marginally more expensive, but, probably no more than 50 cents or $1 per voter. I would imagine, and we'd want to confirm this with the registrar, that there would be a jump when you look to a mail ballot election.
We don't have a sense of what that percentage would likely be.
Maybe it would go up to $3, $4 per registered voter, but we'd have to look at that.
And the funding for that comes from?
The school district.
General fund basis?
Yeah, that's typical.
Okay. Do you have a sense of what the voters are like in Sonoma County? I have a sense, based on the last election, that suggests that if you put something on the ballot that isn't specific about what it's going to be used for, and isn't locked in to what it's going to be used for, that they're not going to be interested.
Yeah.
And so it seems to me that if we consider something like this, that we need to consider a specific target, something that we're focused on, that we think that if it's paid for over a 4 to 8 year period of time, It's going to have a direct impact on student achievement and can be sold on that basis, and that the money will only be used for that because the voters are increasingly not trusting the elected officials to spend it on what they're saying they're going to spend it on. And I think we had that in spades in the Measure A election. Now, whether I would probably argue that the voters' view towards education may be different than it is towards more traditional political subdivisions like county, but that was such a wide margin that it seems to me that that's a considerable thing to be looking at. The second item in my mind is that if you're looking at something that's a funding for a 4 to 8 year period of time, you've got to look at what is it that I am paying for, and at the end of that time frame, in that 4 or 8 years, how am I going to continue to pay for that if I want to continue whatever it is that I was paying for that time frame. In other words, if you become dependent on those funds and there's an expectation to continue whatever it is that you've been funding for it, and you don't go back to the electorate, or you weren't successful in going back to the electorate, then you have a pretty substantial cut that needs to be made in something else within the district. You know, I'd love to believe that we could solve the health care issue with a partial tax, but it's a short-term tax. That doesn't make a lot of sense. And so, you know, I'm interested in what's there, but I think that what we need to do as a district is talk about what is it that we could use this for on a short-term basis that would have substantial impact. And if that exists somewhere, then we ought to really look at this. I mean, that's my gut opinion.
Yeah, on the county's Measure A issue, I wasn't involved in that effort, but I watched it closely, as we do with most tax proposals in the region. You know, it was a general tax. They weren't allowed to specify or legally earmark the use of funds, and I think that created a real political problem for them.
Well, I mean, the choice was made that they wanted to do it at the lower level to be able to do that.
Sure.
And you know, whether or not this is accurate, a lot of folks were saying, well, if you said it was specifically and you locked it in, and they would have required the supermajority with respect to it.
Sure.
There are a number of people that think that might have passed. Well, you know, I mean, it's good for political fodder. I'm not sure that anybody has the crystal ball to know that that's the case, though.
Yeah, and the county had a history of successfully passing two-thirds proposals when they were specific, so I think there is a lesson there. With a parcel tax, you don't have the option of structuring this as a general tax. Right. It's going to be a two-thirds measure no matter what, so there's an incentive there to be more specific. I think the only question is, at what point do you become so specific that you are tying the district's hands in the utilization of funds over a 4 to 8 year period? I had districts over the last decade that adopted parcel taxes in the early 2000s when times were pretty good and pledged things like 20-to-1 class sizes in K through 3. Then the budget crisis hits, and now all of a sudden they're struggling to keep 25-to-1 or 27-to-1. So, those types of specific ratios and things of that nature, you want to be careful with, because it's hard to know what is in store over the next 5-6 years.
No, I think that's important, because I think that the district's credibility on a long-term basis is important as well. We won't deal with it as a board 10 or 15 years from now, the individuals here, but the district itself will. And I think it's something that this district enjoys with its public relative to bonds. We've always been successful with them. But that's because we've always spent it on what we said we were going to spend it on. We've had good oversight committee, and we've had very good staff to make sure that we did what we said we were going to do. And that's a risk when on the parcel tax side, on a short-term basis, if you don't stick with that. And the more specificity seems to be the rule of the day. All right, thanks.
Jen?
Yeah, a couple of my points were already addressed, so I just have one question, and that is, obviously that we just passed a couple bonds, and do you have examples of other districts that have run bond elections and, shortly thereafter put a parcel tax on the ballot?
Sure, many. In fact, I can name any number of districts that have successfully passed both within a year and a half, 2-year span of time. In fact, Cotati Werner Park, which we've been talking about here, they did it in the other order where they passed a parcel tax in 2012 and came back with a successful bond in 2014. But it suggests that, voters are able to distinguish between these measures and separate facility funding versus programmatic funding. And that's an important component of the outreach and education process, is you have to be able to explain to voters how these are different pots of funds for different needs. And the polling would really guide us. If there's real tax rate sensitivity because of the recent passage of measures L and I, well, maybe a longer time horizon makes sense, but that's one of those questions the poll can answer.
Thanks. Larry?
I wanted to make a clarification. You said $1 per resident, per voter?
Yeah, and these are very rough estimates. So per registered voter, that's
for the mail-in.
No, that would be for the general election.
And the mail-in was $3 to $4?
Yeah, and these are very rough estimates. So I'm happy to contact the registered voters and get you an estimate.
Don't you have to send a mail-in ballot to every voter anyway?
Yes. Yeah, so they typically express it in a cost per registered voter so that districts of different sizes can get an estimate. But the reason why the general and primary elections are less expensive is that the cost of that election is being shared by all the different jurisdictions with issues on those ballots. With a mail ballot, you're almost
I didn't
the
understand
only
that the
jurisdiction.
and the when they actually open the polls, it's the factor sharing the results.
Right.
And of course the polling is you would take every specific issue that the district thinks the voters could, and then they would indicate the level of support. You could actually take the percentages based on each response and see what you come up with.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think what we're looking for now is some direction from our board. I think the superintendent needs to know if we're interested in pursuing this in terms of another discussion, in terms of getting together, talking about moving it forward with polling. You want to add to that?
Yes, I mean, so one of the things we need to gauge is your level of interest, in so much as, the next step, we need to begin investing district dollars. And so is there enough interest from the board to bring forward contracts about exploration and really facilitate an in-depth discussion now that you understand the process? Because that really is the next step, is beginning to collect actual data. So whether it's from the registrar about how much things cost, whether it's the polling about what kind of the thresholds in our community are and what priorities they have and what they'd be willing to pay for, all of those things kind of venture into the, we'll start being charged for those services. So that really is kind of the discussion about how interested are we.
Director Carl, then Hanel.
Two answers to your question. First is I think we need all 7 of us. I'd like to hear what Laura and Frank think with respect to it. And second, personally, I think I would be a lot more comfortable having those kinds of discussions if I knew what district office or the district as a whole thought we would use the money for. Within that context of something where you have 4 to 8 years, I would not be in favor of a parcel tax just to go to the general fund, period, because I don't think we pass it. I don't think,
Well, we literally couldn't write that on the ballot, so that
well,
wouldn't happen.
but it's pretty, when you look at Cotati Werner Park, and Cotati Werner Park in 2012 was pretty close to that. I mean, it wrote 10 different things, but boy, it gave a tremendous amount of flexibility within that, where it came pretty darn close to anything that you can think of that you might want to spend it on in the district, you could make fit under one of those areas. I don't think that's where the voter is at this stage.
Well, they're in the stages of going back out for a parcel tax, so we'll be able to see, and they've been very strategic and specific with their polling and kind of threading that needle between the needs of the district, which I think ours are very similar to kind of some of the language that they put up, whether it's, and of course we'd want to talk to stakeholders, but arts and music in all of our schools, our libraries, the same types of benefits for our staff. I don't mean medical benefits because I'm not sure about that, but kind of attracting and retaining, as they said, high quality staff. I think those are the things we have to look at. And San Francisco, for example, passed a perpetual, so that means like forever tax for before and after school programs for their entire community. And I think really looking at what people have done, and I have heard, and so kind of as our first parcel tax, usually the first one has kind of some type of limit, but then you see about kind of going further. And we have places around here who have gone for perpetual parcel taxes. And so I think it's not really just about kind of short-term investments, but it really is what is our community willing to pay for that we can't do right now. So if we wanted a full-time AD at every high school, I mean, those are types of things that we could talk about through a parcel tax. And again, we have to think of some of our own priorities and measure them against what the community also considers their priorities, so we can all be successful in furthering our dollars. But I think, I think there are a lot of options that would always enhance and make our schools stronger, and our staffs have the resources they need to do the work that everybody wants to do.
Larry?
Well, I think, we can't really converse with the superintendent on what we think, because once 4 of us do, we're breaking the Brown Act. But I think the superintendent should seek, the superintendent's staff with reaching out to members of the community, perhaps, and the teachers, and see what it is that they think are the things that could pass. Like it could be after-school programs, it could be athletics, but I don't think athletics has a good track record, as I remember. Libraries, I don't know what it is, but I think then we come together after that list is developed. It would just be a suggested polling list, and then with all the board members here, I definitely would be worth, and we do have some one-time monies that we could spend on a polling, and then we go from there. It's going to take a high bar of polling data to get that 2/3. And Roanoke Park did have the 2012 down, and we're not there now. So I think the polling will reveal what it should be.
Jen?
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested in learning more, and I agree with Director Carl that I think that we should come up with some very specific goals for any funding raised, because I think that's where the electorate is, although the feasibility study will tell us whether or not that's true. And interested in hearing how much that study will cost, how much the election would cost, so I'd like to get more information. And also, in addition to that, I'd like to know if we can get some ballpark figures as to how much the actual campaigns have cost. I know that's not money out of our pocket, but it ends up being sort of a burden we create for our community to support in terms of their efforts. And so I'd like to know what that is, how much did Roanoke Park spend, and or other districts similar to our size or in similar communities.
Okay, I've gotten a speaker card since we started talking about this. Omar Medina.
There we go. A few things that I'd like to say. First off, on polling, Measure A polled at 55%. That's why it went to a general tax. So me personally, I don't necessarily always trust the polling. I think in terms of a parcel tax, the things that me personally I would definitely support: arts, sports, and teachers. I think we definitely need to be able to recruit more teachers, pay teachers better, and I think that's critical to the long-term success of our district. The arts and the sports, and it's generally about activities. I think that our students really need things to do to keep them out of trouble, keep them engaged, keep them away from the gangs. And I think that sports is definitely something that could definitely garner a lot of support. I love the arts. I have no artistic talent, but I love the arts. I could appreciate it. And I think those are things that we're lacking and we need. And also provide healing for students that is oftentimes needed and part of this whole continuum of the restorative justice stuff. The other thing is that I don't know at what levels or how the district works in terms of the statewide efforts. But I know that there's definitely a lot of work on the Prop 13 reform, probably a ballot measure coming up in 2016 around that. I don't know if the district's involved in that, but looking at that as, how will that affect revenue in the future and how it might affect a parcel tax, and also work around Prop 30 and that getting extended and how that could affect educational funding. So I think those are things to look into. Definitely, I would love to know what the board is doing on that, and I definitely agree with the fact that it shouldn't be limited to a short term. It should be like a perpetual forever thing where you always get this funding. And I'm curious as to, opposed to just like a set amount, can it be a percentage that's tied to property that maybe has like a floor where minimum amount, let's say the $89, but then it could be a percentage that's higher based on property values? So that's just a question. Thank you.
Larry?
How long should we, in a normal election, a bond election, the advice I went to when I went to some, on this, it takes about a year to get the support of the public behind it. How long on a mail-in ballot?
I think that planning horizon is similar between a parcel tax and a bond measure. A big component to that question is, what's the level of support that you start with, right? How complicated is your proposal? To what extent does the community already understand your need? Typically we want to dip our toe in the water with that initial survey to kind of understand what's our baseline, right? Where are we starting? And then that will really determine what sort of a process needs to follow and what sort of time frame is required. Obviously, the sooner you start this process, the more potential elections you have available to you to target. As you wait, then you start to narrow those options.
And you would probably poll, Omar's, would like to have a perpetual, I would too, but you would poll. The polling would reveal whether a perpetual would have a likelihood of passing or whether a 5-year or a 10-year, whatever the number is. That would be the polling as to feasibility.
I can tell you with confidence that very few school districts are able to get a perpetual parcel tax right out of the gates. So the approach that's worked successfully is initially go for a shorter term. That gives you an opportunity to demonstrate that you can use the funds responsibly, like you've done with your bond measure. Once voters are comfortable with what you're delivering with their dollars, then they're more likely to approve a longer term. But that's usually done in a renewal context.
Thank you.
Well, I'd like to see us move forward with exploring this, and that I do think we need to come back with this topic again when Frank and Laura are here. But I would like to pursue this in terms of having some polling done and find out what our community is willing to put forth for our schools and see where we go from there. Do I have any support for that?
I think we'd have to understand what the cost was associated with that, et cetera. So, I don't know.
Okay, so when we come back from discussion,
20,000,
okay, right.
25,000?
That polling information would come back if we bring it back for discussion when the other two board members are here. So I'd like us to move forward with that if we're all in agreement. Yes? Ron? Yes? Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Eichmann. We're going to have opening of the public hearing regarding Santa Rosa City Schools' adopted budget for 2015-16.
Yes, thank you very much. And I'm going to turn it over to Carolyn Bischoff, the Executive Director of Fiscal Services, and she has a PowerPoint that will give you a general overview of the proposed budget for 15-16.
Good evening, Superintendent Shields, President Jay, board members. Oops, thank you. Sorry, my first presentation. So tonight what we're bringing to you is what the changes are from the governor's January budget proposal, which we based our second interim report on. And now these are the proposals from the May revise that we're going to base our adopted budget on. We're in the third year of the LCFF formula funding, second year of LCAP, and the second year of the STRS increases. They're increasing about 1.8% each year. And the governor, for the second time, has proposed some one-time funding. This year he's proposing about $601 per ADA, which would generate over $8 million for the district. These are one-time funds and should be used in that nature. The local control funding formula, the governor's proposed about a $2.1 billion increase statewide. The gap funding, or the funding between the floor and the target, has been increased from 32% to over 53%, and that should generate about $11 million for the district. That $11 million, while it sounds like a large number, is not going to go that far. Here is how that money will support our district. We have a contract settlement for 2 years. It's going to cost over $6 million. We increased our benefits. We have retiree costs. We have step and column increases, and we have those STRS cost increases that we just referred to. These amounts total over $11 million. And there's our projections on the STRS rate increases. These rates have been adopted by the state legislature and will be implemented in each of the years. There are similar rate increases proposed for PERS, but PERS rates are set by the PERS board each year, so we do not know those numbers, but we do have estimates for each and every year, which are similar to these estimates for STRS. New for this year, from Proposition 2, which was passed, help me out here, 2 years ago? Last year, is that we now must do disclosure on the reserves that we have. So anything in excess of our expenditures. I'm sorry, hang on. Okay. The state has not funded their reserves yet, so we are not in the trigger years, which would cap our reserves at 6% or twice our economic uncertainties. But we are being asked to talk about our reserves, and that's a separate item on tonight's board agenda, so I just wanted to bring it to your attention. If needed, we could get an exemption, but it would be better for us to determine how we're planning to use those reserves over the years. The gap funding is not a static number during the year. Unfortunately, it does float, and over the course of the year, from when we talked about adopted budget last year to where we are at this point in time, these are the changes in the per ADA funding, $74 at the elementary level and $35 at the high school level. These have been incorporated into our projections. The gap funding will be finalized later in probably about July. That was when they were finalized last year. There is a proposal before the legislature to make that gap funding percentage as adopted by the legislature a static number, so we would know our funding from year to year, which would be very helpful. What we're showing here is how the per ADA funding has grown as we started with the LCFF, and the goal is in 2021 to be at the target. The target will bring us back to the 2007, 2008 funding levels. So it was going to take us 12 years to get back to where we were, plus COLAs. The increases over this next year are fairly substantial because of that 53% gap increase, and that's helping us fund our increases for this next year. Here are the numbers by district, but as you can see, the LCFF is generating over $130 million for the district. It also represents 82% of our funding. Our funding is based on students being in the classroom, and that's how they learn. This is our spending plan at this time. The bulk of our spending, as you can see, is for staff. We are a people-oriented business, and we are spending approximately 76% of our budget on people. The other largest segment of our spending is for services, and for our district, those costs would be having students in county-operated programs, non-public student placements, pupil transportation, utilities, our after-school program, and our insurance. That accounts for about $21 million right there on the board. Our projected beginning balance at this time is $11 million. We are projecting a surplus because of that one-time funding. If you look at that number, compare it to the one-time funding, you'll see very similar numbers. We are recommending that the one-time money be assigned as a set-aside at this time because the legislature has not signed those funds yet. And we're also recommending an assignment of the salary settlement because we have not paid that salary settlement, so it's still in our ending balance. A 3% reserve, which is for our district of our size, is about $4.5 million, which leaves us with about $3 million unassigned and unappropriated, and we'll talk about that in the next item on the board agenda. Going forward, we are looking at declining revenues because we're looking at declining enrollment, but it's not significant enough at this time to project declining staffing. So we're leaving staffing at a relatively static level, but we are projecting that decrease in enrollment. Gap funding, there's an amount recommended by the Department of Finance, there's an amount recommended by School Services, and we're sort of shooting in the middle there. So we're not going for the high, we're not going for the low, but we're trying to be somewhat conservative still. We're recommending 27 and 29%, leaves us with still positive ending balances. I know that was kind of fast, but are there any questions about the budget?
No, you did such a great job. We don't have one question. Thank you so much.
No, I actually want to make a comment on it.
Oh, sorry, Ron, I
This
didn't
is,
see you.
I followed budget stuff for a long time, and this is very clear and concise and very helpful. I think it was a very well-done report. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. My mouth is dry.
Thank you very much. Okay, that was a public hearing. No comments from the public. We'll close the public hearing. And we move on to F6.
Okay, thank you. And again, I'm going to turn this over to Carolyn to go through this.
Okay, no PowerPoint for F6, but you should binder, your board binder, a sort of spreadsheet layout. This is a new process for us this year, so we're using a format recommended by the county office. We have to identify our unappropriated reserves. They're standing at about 19 million before we start making the deductions for economic uncertainties and the set-asides that we're recommending. Again, this is with the $8 million of one-time money in there. We also have a special reserve that's just a general special reserve. That's our Fund 17. It has about $300,000 in it. So that gives us a total of about almost $20 million of uncommitted funds. We are a large district, so our economic uncertainty level is 3% or $4.5 million. So we get to take that out for the first bit. And then we're being asked to be thoughtful about what is in these reserves and, are they excessive? Well, they still have our salary settlement, which we know we're going to pay out, to $2.7 million, so we say we're going to set those monies aside. We have the one-time money for about $8.9 million. That may or may not materialize, so we're going to set that money aside. And then if you look forward, if you looked at that slide on our multi-year projection, we're going to be deficit spending about $3 million over the next couple of years. So we're saying let's set that aside so we have it available when the need comes. That leaves us with about $600,000 unidentified spending. And we felt that that was a for a district of this size. 600,000 is going to buy some computers maybe. So that's our ending balances in our general fund and in our special reserve fund. And then we just wanted on the second page to let you know, we do operate several other funds in the district. And these are the ending balances in those funds. They all have specific purposes and are really not available for the general operation of the school district. So this is a requirement of transparency. The ed code is cited on both pages. They're also, they were also listed in your public hearing packet where I gave you the list of all the funds that we operate. So first interim, second interim, and again, it adopted budget because we will be doing a final on that one. So this is the first time we're all seeing this and dealing with this process.
Larry.
Very clear, thank you.
Thank you.
The 8.1 million, is that, you said it's not for certain, so does that depend on the actual passing of the budget? Where the other money is?
The governor proposed the $601 per student at his May revise. The governor can only propose a budget. The legislature has to adopt and sign it.
Okay.
We think it's a good hard number, but the legislature might have other priorities.
Second question, the 8.1 million. So we put it as a set aside. So let's say it's, the budget is passed, we have the 8.1. Now that's, do we have to spend it by a certain time, or, you know, we don't want to be over 6%. If we add that to the reserve, that puts us over.
So that money will be unrestricted money. It has no time frame on spending it, nor any reporting around the spending of the monies. Kind of looking at is the deficit spending in the next couple of years is going to use that money up. So we're using it right now to say, yes, we're solvent.
Got it. Thank you.
I don't see any other questions. This is a discussion item, and thank you for the report. Thank you.
She's good.
We'll now move on to F7, which is another public hearing on Santa Rosa Charter School.
Thank you, President Jay, Superintendent Shields, and the board. So we're going to open up the public hearing for the Santa Rosa Charter School renewal.
Is there anyone here to speak to this item? Seeing none, close the public hearing.
Thank you.
F8 is action on the charter renewal for Santa Rosa Charter School.
So every 5 years, whether they're a dependent or independent charter, a charter must come up for renewal. This is the Santa Rosa Charter Schools renewal, the one that sits on the Comstock campus. They are one of our independent charters. This charter was looked at by various departments in curriculum instruction, special ed, Yale, and also by Stephanie Farland and John Ye. Stephanie created this resolution. The proposal that you have in front of you tonight recommends that you approve the 5-year renewal from 2015 to 2020 with some conditions to be looked at and amended by August 10th, which we will be working with LaDonna, the director, to make these changes. Charter renewals have changed a bit. The state has some different ways in which they're looking at charter renewals as for regarding curriculum, and also they have to embed their LCAP and the 8 state priorities into their charter renewals, so it's different. It's a little bit, maybe a little bit more challenging to make sure that you fulfill that, and so we want to make sure that this is a strong charter that Santa Rosa School Board can accept.
Any comments, questions? Motion?
So moved.
That was moved by
Second.
Director Christoph, seconded by Director Hanel. Roll call vote, please.
Director Christoph?
Aye.
Director Hanel?
Aye.
Director Close?
Aye.
Director Carl?
Aye.
President Jay?
Aye. Thank you. Now we move on to F9, first reading of administrative regulations in the 4000 series.
Thank you very much, President Che, Superintendent Shields, and board members. This is a first reading of actually a new board policy recommendation from CSBA regarding the sick leave and personal illness leave laws that changed in California in regards to employees that work more than 30 hours a week.
Right.
So what my office has been working closely with the county and all the other school districts to put processes in place to start tracking all of this. And this is a policy that goes along with the use of that leave.
Any comments or questions? So it's just a discussion, I bring it back?
Yeah.
Okay,
I have
thank
one
you.
question. It won't affect our contract in any way? Or that's being adjusted if it is?
We are, our employees that are already part of different units or associations in our district already have their own agreements and rules. This is more about the substitutes and other folks that are working more than 30 hours a week.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Now move on to F10. Jason.
Thank you very much. This is a second reading for an adoption of board policy dealing with volunteers and how we handle and treat our volunteers in that district. I think volunteers play a very important role, so it's important that we update our policies and get in line with the recommendations from CSBA.
So this is an action item.
Move approval.
Second.
Moved by Director Carl, seconded by Director Hanel. Roll call vote, please.
Director Carl?
Aye.
Director Hanel?
Aye.
Director Close?
Aye.
Director Christoph?
Aye.
President Jay?
Aye.
Thank you very much. I have the next item as well, F11. This is dealing with, again, updating board policies and getting in line with the recommendations from CSBA on policies around leaves for our employees.
This is an action item. It's coming back before us for the second time.
Move approval of item F11.
Second.
Moved by Director Carl, seconded by Director Close. Roll call vote, please.
Director Carl?
Aye.
Director Close?
Aye.
Director Hanel?
Aye.
Director Christoph?
Aye.
President Jay?
Aye. Mr. Lee.
All right, I have the final item, F12. This is, again, an action item, a second reading of adoption of board policies and updating administrative regulations in the 4000 series. This is, again, getting our policies in our district up to date and in lines with the CSBA recommendations on temporary and substitute personnel in our district.
Questions, comments, motion?
Move approval.
Second.
Moved by Director Carl, seconded by Director Close. Roll call vote, please.
Director Carl?
Aye.
Director Close?
Aye.
Director Hanel?
Aye.
Director Christoph?
Aye.
President Jay?
Aye. Thank you, Jason. F13, second reading of revised board policy in the 7000 series. Superintendent Shields?
Yes, so we bring forward the board policy with the recommendations you made to kind of take each action separately as we have kind of on some other resolutions, but the number 3 on circle page 1 about being named for a living person, A and B on circle page 2, and then kind of the rest of it as a whole.
So I move approval of this board policy, adding back number 3 and numbers 3A and B that are highlighted on the
Circle page
policy.
2.
So does that cover the whole thing? Takes care of the whole?
So
Bill-
he's saying, yes, make the recommended changes, but customize it to our district by including item 3 on circle page 1,
Okay,
and items A and B, 3A and B on circle page 2.
okay. So do we have a second to that? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I had a question. I just want to make sure that this means if we do vote for this, that we can still name a building after a living person, correct?
No, you cannot.
Cannot.
Cannot after a living, well, can't name a school after a living person. That's all. It says no school will be named after a living person. A building could be, but no school will be named after a living person. I mean, that's a policy that this district's had for,
Ever.
pick the number of years. It's been at least 20. And it's never raised an issue before. So, and frankly, we're not building any schools right now, so the likelihood of that coming about.
Bill, we had that naming of the Language Academy, Cesar Chavez, and there were some other names that were brought forward. Were there any, none of the people were living, is that correct?
There was nobody that was living.
Okay.
And there was nobody that was brought forward that didn't fall within the been dead for 13
All right,
months.
I understand. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I have a motion and I have a second.
I
So
second that, yeah.
That was moved by Director Carl, seconded by Director Close. Roll call vote, please.
Director Carl?
Aye.
Director Close?
Aye.
Director Hanel?
Aye.
Director Christoph?
Aye.
President Jay?
Aye. Okay, now we move on to F14, which is scheduling of a board retreat training. So hopefully everybody has their calendars here, and we've been given some dates to consider.
So I'm sending around a table. If you could just, and we will keep an aggregate amount, if you could tell me the dates that you're available, so we can look for one that ideally all of us can attend, if not the majority of us can attend. So Donna, can I ask you to run down and go in order with just a no or a yes of your
June
availability?
27th is yes, I'm available. Not available July 11th.
Wait a minute. Okay.
Just talking, just
Just
me right
you,
now.
Donna, yep.
July 25th, yes. August 22nd, yes.
August 29th?
No,
September 12th?
yes.
Larry?
Everything's a yes.
That was so easy, thank you. Jen?
The first two are no, the rest are yes.
Bill?
First three are no, the rest are yes.
Ron?
Yes on the 22nd and 29th, no on the other four.
Okay.
You have input from Directors Gonzalez and Pugh?
Yes, they were able to
Thank
submit
you.
dates
Great.
prior.
Great.
So we will get back to you, our options.
So Ron, you're not available September 12th? That's the only one that has a single no on it.
Which one?
The September date,
The September 12th, yeah.
I've a history society function that I'm coordinating, so on the 12th. So if I wasn't involved, I wouldn't, I'd say no.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, right now, unfortunately, there will be no day, there's no Saturday that the entire group can come together.
Let me double check, okay? I'll see if I can find somebody, if this is the date that works for people. Let me see what I can do, okay?
Good.
Thank you.
That would be greatly appreciated, thank you. So that means everybody better block it out right now.
Yeah, yes, tentatively, right now, that is,
You know, I made a mistake. I'm not available July 25th. I'm sorry.
Doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't matter anyway.
well, just
I'm
in
okay,
case,
actually, it's the
tonight.
29th. I misread
So
my form.
currently, it is, the 12th,
September 12th is the
only
best
date.
option
The
we
only
have, where only one member, in the worst case scenario, only one member is not available. Everywhere else has at least 3 members not available.
Okay,
So let's see what Ron can do on September 12th.
Right.
If not, then I think what we need to do is start looking at a couple of successive evenings during the week.
Yeah.
agreed.
Okay.
That might not be
For the facilitator, correct?
yeah, it's, that feels less.
What about Sunday?
I don't know about Sundays are always an option.
Can you, everybody, we
I
can,
bet you if everybody can do September 12th, that everybody can do September 13th.
I will ask the
Facilitator. Thank you.
and get back to us.
right,
So if everybody tentatively right now could put that down. block it
September
out,
13th.
So block
September
that
13th.
weekend out.
Yeah,
September 13th or
For now.
12th?
both, for right now.
All right.
for right now, please.
We have one day of those two. Not both.
No, you right now, put
I
down
got
both
it,
days.
12th or 14th.
Otherwise, I'm going to come over there and put it down for you.
You are, huh?
I'll wrestle that calendar out of your hand.
But we're talking about meeting.
Oh, right. No.
Just be one
Just
of
one
those
day.
2 days, but block them
But until we
both
can settle,
so we can make
want to make sure
she
nobody gives it, nobody
would be
books something.
available.
Yeah, right. I just want
Okay.
to clarify that.
Yeah.
We're not
So
meeting
now
2
we're
days in a
on
row.
to F15, which is creation of an ad hoc transportation committee. And I would really like to see this put together. And I'd like to ask Larry, Ron, and Bill to be on the committee. And I'd like Larry to lead the committee and work with Steve Eichmann to get it rolling. And I think that it would help us as we bring forward the transportation issues that we have facing us.
Okay.
I have a question when you're done. Okay. I really would appreciate the invitation to do this, and I'd really like to do it, but then I saw the description saying that this is going to take a lot of time over the summer, and I've got a lot of travel plans this summer, so I'm not sure, if the dates may make a difference for me. I can give you a calendar in terms of when I'll be
I
gone.
appreciate your honesty. That's
Yeah.
great. Let's see, Steve, could you come up with some projected dates of when you would think it would be helpful to have, the committee weigh in? And if you can't do it, I'll do it.
Okay.
Well, and it could be possible, because this is ad hoc, it has different requirements. It could be possible that the meetings could be done kind of by phone. I don't know where you're traveling or how unavailable you'll be. A lot of the density of kind of work in terms of preparing ourselves for the board to make a decision about kind of which path we'll move on. A bulk of that work is this summer, so that the board can have information by September to kind of move forward. But it is also possible, potentially, and we can talk to our facilitator, to either participate via email or phone to have kind of to have participation in the discussion.
Yeah, I have time to do that. That would work out fine, and I'll have email access everywhere I am, so that'll.
So we'll just explore those options, and I heard you say,
I'd step in, I could step in.
if being visibly there is a problem, then
And
we can
Larry
look
has a
for another.
question.
And maybe an approximation of, Steve, what you studied this issue, approximately how many meetings you think might be necessary?
Well, looking at the model that is here, this is just a recommendation or a possible recommendation. It's a one-day workshop where it could be up to 6 to 8 hours, just to kind of go over the history of transportation, not only in the state but in the district as well. And then also you could have 2 to 4 two-hour workshops. And then once we have the report back and we've made a determination as to what direction the district wants to go, then you could have a follow-up meeting, 6 months after that, and you could have another a year after that as well. Just to kind of gauge, is this doing what we thought it would do? Is this what we really want to keep doing? And, is this what we want to do going forward?
And you might decide that an 8-hour workshop on transportation isn't what you want to do, but rather you have a series of questions you want to make sure are answered as we consider kind of moving forward, right? Certain priorities you want to identify, that whatever option is chosen, kind of that fuels the depth of the report, and kind of you have some certain aspects of service or whatever it is around transportation that you want to make sure are in the report. An 8-hour workshop on transportation might be overkill, I would think. Perhaps after we make our decision, then kind of what all of that means and entails might. Yeah, could do a cute little video.
Maybe a video.
Even 2
You might be-
hours. 2 hours is a lot of time on a transportation
Yeah.
discussion.
Yeah,
The
We'll work it
wonderful
out.
world of transportation could take 8 hours.
we'll work it out. We're going to work it out, Steve. We're going to work it out.
We're going to start at the Romans, or?
We are adjourned. Thank you.